Hello and welcome to the Overlap Rugby podcast. I am Daragh, this is Shane.
Oh, yeah.
Two Irish lads taking a gander at the world's rugby is the premise of our show. This is number 43.
Yep.
Very excited now. We've reached the what was a very climactic weekend of Six Nations rugby, which will very much dominate today's show. A game-breaking weekend, and what I must say is brilliant weekend of Six Nations rugby, and I think the best that we've had this year.
Yeah, probably so. Yeah. Well, just in terms of that, those two contests on Saturday were both great in different ways, and obviously the big one being the one in Cardiff. It was good to see Wales finally in Cardiff as well in week 3. Was the first time. The first time we got to hear the anthem as well, and that was obviously like the glamour fixture of the whole weekend, and it actually did live up to the billing this time. I was glad it was tries that won it and not errors as we had foretold. But
indeed.
But I suppose we probably should start with the other one,
The
earlier game. Much as it would be exciting to get into that straight away, but the first game of the weekend was France v Scotland, and it finished 27-10 in favour of France. So France got a win.
France got a win. France were very good. They the last 10 minutes it had 3 tries. Up until then it had been a tight affair.
Tight-ish. Like France
but generally speaking, it wasn't just like one team running a roughshod over the other. France were better.
Yeah.
But beneficiaries of quick starts, a quick start of the first half and a quick start in the second, and Scotland really just couldn't play themselves into the game.
Yeah, it was a very, very disjointed looking Scotland that it was just like a hodgepodge of some of the parts that were left over from Edinburgh and Glasgow, and it didn't really gel at all. Much as I liked players like Johnson the week before against Ireland, I thought he stepped up and played pretty well. He was kind of all over the place in the midfield next to Horn, who didn't have a great game by his standards as well at 10. Very annoying for Gregor Townsend to be missing Finn for it, obviously, because he's such a fulcrum for them. But just like the whole backline just failed to break anything down or create anything really. And then the few times there was space, their execution let them down, and they kind of it just seemed like they didn't know quite how to finish off anything that they did create. Yeah. Whereas they actually, like, in terms of getting bullied, which was the fear in France, they actually didn't really get that bullied in close quarters. They just couldn't actually match France's creativity.
I definitely thought there were a lot of positives to take from the game. Like a good few of them. I thought the pack first of all did stand up. They were competent, pretty much. Going toe-to-toe with the French pack pretty much for the whole game. I thought Gilchrist was very good again as just a consistent team.
He's a very good performer.
He's a very good performer. I thought Richie at 7 was really very good. He was one of the few really trying to make plays on the ball in defence, and he got a few and slowed up French ball. He was a nuisance and he acquitted himself very nicely. Yeah. And McAnally, I thought, put himself around as well. Disappointing week.
The line-out didn't function that well. That'll be a problem for them.
And that's
with McAnally as well.
Consistent. That's still consistently a bugbear of theirs, for sure. And when the replacement props came on as well, there wasn't
anything there. Yeah, it's just front foot football every scrum for France, which is France by the other token were actually just very impressive. It was nice to see just a little sprinkling of consistency in terms of the fact that there were so many Toulouse heads, particularly in the back line. And 100%. Just to make the link more tangible, that everyone kind of knew what wavelength they should be on, and even with the centres being a bit direct as they are, that selection, they still produced some good moments in that structure. Them having the axis of Ramos and Ntamack being both first receivers just allowed them to get out wide sooner. And I actually thought Ficou and Pastore both had pretty decent games.
Totally. It was from France's perspective. It was a lot closer to what I had me optimistic about the team in advance of the tournament. In the sense that there was this Toulouse through line that was running through the team, which helps fix a lot of the disjointed issues that they've been suffering from all of this chopping and changing that's been going on. Yeah. That when faced with adversity, they actually do have something to fall back on. They do know each other. They do know how they want to play the game. Yeah. And just picking a bunch of, like, Felix Lambie getting in there was a no-brainer, but now that he's in there, I can't, and himself and Etoria and actually to his credit, Wenceslas Larry coming back into the team as well.
Play very well.
But they actually are a lot more fit, a lot young fit guys in the team, so they're less likely to gas out, and because they have that Toulouse through line running through the team, they do have their patterns and memories and style and identity to fall back on when things don't go their way. And it was their attacking shape that won them the game. You know, they managed to keep it up. They had shown signs of cool innovation against Wales that sort of pittered out into nothingness in the second half. Yeah. But in this game, it was very free flowing. It was done at a very high pace with a lot of accuracy. And you know, that I think it was the second try just on half time with the Bastereau chip and chase try. That's some try, you know.
Excellent. It's checkers from Bastereau as well, sweeping left foot chip.
Beautiful. And then Ficou running off him, and it was absolute jouet, pure class French play. Very, very difficult to defend. Yeah. And that's like that's in the arsenal. It's like for all of the complaints that have come, and I'm sure will come in weeks and months to come about this French outfit. You know, that's still there. They still have.
Very true.
Just a touch of class and some real ballers that you can get into the team. And Ntamack at 10, really, you know, I was skeptical, but he was very, very good.
He was really good. As was Dupont at 9, like just excellent. They absolutely bossed it. And Scotland's a half-back pairing were kind of stuttering and struggling to find their way into the game while this was going on. And I didn't see the two boys put a foot wrong, to be honest, for pretty much the whole game. They were dictating the pace and keeping it very, very high tempo, but having the fitness to match that. Few little weak links in there. There's still Van Mahino hanging around, who in the second row, and for the life of me, I don't know what he does for that team at all, other than make them significantly worse as far as work rate and stamina, because he doesn't get through enough work. And then by the second half, he's coming up with some horror plays. They're pretty sure for the try, actually, Scotland try, it was his man who was missing, and Bastereau ended up yelling at him as Scotland went through for, albeit a consolation score. But some of his stats are horrendous this tournament, and he's just seemingly just a big guy in the midst of it all. No, I
don't necessarily disagree. It's sort of a bizarre one that he's the Claremont man, other than Pinot, who's still hanging around. But you would think that an easy enough personnel switch would be to put a Turrier into that lock. Then all of a sudden you have very dynamic locks and you have room for another back rower.
Yeah, like Cameron or someone who's also playing well.
That's to come, but for the time being, a lot of positives from
I certainly can't fault this performance anywhere near as much as the previous ones. This was more of along the lines of what we want to see from France, really. 100%, and it's a few key changes in key positions, and it worked. That being said, I just don't know. It could all change before the next round. But the fact that they won, means that it's more likely do they stick with it.
But that's the point. Is that it's just 1 week. Yeah. And while there is a lot of positivity in terms of actually building layers on top of it, you have to be thinking, like, what's going to happen if things go wrong for Ntamack at 10? If his confidence breaks, if he has a bad week, is he just going to be wrenched out of the team like Lopez was? Like, going forward, Dupont and Ntamack, it looks exciting as a halfback pairing, but they're going to come and face top teams and face big challenges, and you know they're going to struggle some days, possibly even the next round against Ireland. Yeah. So I would like to see them draft. I think the two obvious ones, too mature, like not necessarily to start, but to get into the squad and possibly be benchmen. Or you'd like to see them draft in Machino at 9 and Lopez at 10. To give them real options, like Bellew on the bench at the weekend isn't a real option.
Yeah, and he didn't come on till very late in the game as well, when it was already over, because he can't
probably not test level. Yeah, and but you know, in Lopez you have a very different player from Ntamack, and probably one that less suits the style that would most suit this French team right now, which is why it does make some sense, given that it worked, that Ntamack comes in and plays 10, but you would like to see them have that option of those mature guys to come in
with a kicking game off the bench and close things out.
Just get used to being around. That's how you build teams, is getting them in the squad and getting them used to it, and then your 32-man World Cup squad can start to take some shape, which it still hasn't, to be honest, in spite of this. In spite of this, what was a very, very positive performance. And what I will say is, like, I did think there's a lot of people really digging into Scotland. I did think it was a high enough standard. I thought up front it was high standard. I thought defensively it was high standard. I thought everything that France did that broke Scotland down, all the French tries were really classy, wonderful pieces of play. Even the disallowed tries, all the same.
There were many of them as well.
Ntamack little chip that was just on a sixpence. It was actually like a Finn Russell play. It was a perfect little left-footed chip in behind the Scottish defence. It was a shame it was called back for a knock-on. But there was some wildly good rugby being played in there. And from Scotland's perspective, you know, there are questions. Like, it's easy to write off, and to be honest with you, it could even be fair to write off as you know, this isn't a country with the biggest player pool in the world, and they have an injury crisis right now.
True.
And things could still come up Millhouse for them in World Cup time or next year, or you know, you could get everybody back fit. You could get Hamish Watson in good form and Finn Russell in good form.
True.
But to be honest with you now, like, there's bigger questions starting to be asked since about what's gone on in this Scottish team. I mean, when we started this podcast back, you know, ahead of the 2017 Six Nations, we were talking up Scotland, and this was Vern Cotter's Scotland, as one of the most promising, you know, teams,
upcoming teams on the rise.
And they went and they beat Ireland that year. They went and they beat Wales that year, both in Murrayfield. You know, they've gone on. I think that November they gave the All Blacks a real scare. I think they beat Australia that summer. Then last year didn't really kick on, didn't happen for them in the Six Nations, and now they seem, since Townsend's come in, they seem to be just stuttering a little bit. It's very important that what's going on at Edinburgh is helps them in the sense that there is a foundational thing they can build on. They can have a solid scrum and a solid line-out drive and a solid pack, and great turnover game, and also have that you know,
little X-factor attack dynamism that they need, which, like, they didn't have that at all at the weekend. It was very clunky little kind of offensive sets that didn't really go anywhere.
And listen, I was calling for Peter Horne at 10 over Hastings, which was just, I think, so I understand the call, but it was proven just 100% wrong. In the sense that Hastings came on and really grabbed his opportunity. He looked much better at 10, and you know, Horne obviously just was looking very much not a 10 for the whole game.
It was unfortunate, because I like Horne a lot as a player, and it was just it wasn't good. But it wasn't only that, because then Johnston as well felt like he was playing deep in that second receiver role, which isn't how he plays the game at all, and he was just found behind the gain line being chopped a few times. The passing game was never right. They weren't linking up with the wide men, and it was just, well, that couple that with a few Seymour took a bit of a knock, and then I thought he was actually a little bit off for a period of play after that. But also on the other wing, Maitland is in shocking form, really. Like, he's just not playing well at all, and not making plays that you would expect from a Sarries winger. But he's not, and he was at fault for one of the tries in against Ireland the 2 weeks previous, and he's just not really there. Whereas Darcy Graham I would like to see him get more minutes, because he's an exciting player who's in form this year. But the back line as a whole, well, you've just the live stream sucked out of it. Sure, like, we watched it live on BBC because we had the RT one covered, and it was just like looking at the BBC coverage. They were interviewing Finn Russell pre kick-off, and Stewie Hogg was in studio doing the call, and it's just like, well, that's not really Scotland we know.
There's no question.
You're talking Horne to Johnston instead of Finn Russell to Stewie Hogg as your offensive axis. That's not as good. And it wasn't.
No Hugh Jones either. They haven't, like, it was a tough game for them, and they don't get me wrong, as I've said, they do have positives to take from it. There was a lot of good in what their pack are able to do, and they can feel comfortable knowing that with Edinburgh going so well, that they're developing into a more rounded side, which they can be happy with. But in terms of the identity of the team, one of the things that Gregor Townsend said when he took over was that he wanted Scotland to be the side that played the fastest rugby in the world.
Yes.
And he says, if nothing else, that's what we're going to do. We're going to just be quicker. We're just going to play the fastest rugby in the world. Teams are going to have to deal with that and shut that down. And one of the points that's getting consistently made online by Scottish fans is, can you play that kind of a game with Greg Laidlaw at scrum half? It's fundamentally, it's like, as good as Greg is, it seems fundamentally not to suit the way that they play, especially without Finn Russell there. That everything was slower, and their backline is set up in such a way that they can attack fractured lines, but the fracturing of the line that's supposed to be created by the quick ball, none of that's really coming. And it's
an argument.
Their attack has slowed down. It has slowed down considerably, even with Finn.
Well, France were quicker than them at the weekend.
100%.
So they're not even the fastest team on the pitch, let alone the world. That's That's a good point. It's an interesting point. You'd still have him on the bench then, similar to the point you were making about Lopez, to have him come on. I would still be firmly in the camp of just not picking Ali Price, and I would actually
getting George Horn in there.
Yeah, George Horn. It looks like a great little option. He just needs exposure because the World Cup's coming and they need to decide these things. But he seems to be out of the pecking order. But like Ali Price offers nothing to this team at all. He comes off the bench and you think
he scored a try.
He did score a try from a little trail run that I think George Horn would have been there to score either. But he also cost a try in terms of being like you think people think he's a quick scrum half, but he's so slow in so many things he does. Like getting back to that defensive ruck for the very end for the try that was another try that wasn't, where the ball came back over the line, because he basically took around like 6 seconds to get to the ruck, and then there was a pod set up that was so telegraphed that it got popped to, and then they ended up placing it behind their own line, had to touch it down, and the try came from that ensuing scrum. And that, like, the fault for that falls entirely on the scrummie. Like, you have to be there to marshal your troops out, and there was no way for them to get out. They were boxed in, and France just forced them back, and then got their bonus point try eventually off that. And it's just like that's not quick play. No. that's the opposite of it. And what is he there to bring other than that? And he tends to make a fair few mistakes that I really don't rate. George Horn is an exciting player. If you want to play that fast and loose quick game, I'd be advocating getting him in. Having Greg there to kind of either come on to see a game out, which I'd say he'd be good for, or come in if that's not working, which there's obviously scope for that. If you're going to try and play that quickly, could be error strewn as well. So there's always an option of just changing things up with a mature guy like Greg from the bench.
100%. Yeah,
it's a good argument.
I think I agree with that. And Finn's going to be back, but in the World Cup, they've got, they're going to play probably two of. Definitely Ireland, and then one of New Zealand and South Africa. That's difficult for any team if they continue to play as they are, which is basically they're playing a decent game. There's some attacking enterprise in there. A lot of it's basically just the Finn Russell show and what Finn can produce. But true, if they play the way that they're playing now, at the pace that they're playing now, they haven't a hope or a prayer of getting a win in any of those games.
Yes, it's probably true.
And so what they need to up that tempo, and they need to take more risks and really embrace that old school Glasgow enterprise. Flash it wide. Then in the tight, but like mixing it up, making on the spot calls all the time, being ferocious in the offensive breakdown. Anybody on the pitch who's near to the ruck because the ball is coming back and we're going again, and having that be the crack. Fast tempo, shock teams with it, and it nearly did for the All Blacks back in 2017. I mean, they were that close not that long ago, and now they seem actually a ways off.
They do.
So
they're still not as physical, despite their pack being able to match up. They're still lacking sometimes. So when games get a little slow and a little tight, they're an immediate disadvantage. And if they're a bit disjointed as they were against Ireland, say, which is probably partly due to Ireland putting them that way through phase pressure and them not being as switched on, as well as losing a fulcrum like Stewie Hogg, it was bound to fracture them a little bit mid game. But when it isn't clicking for them, they're revealed as like not only as not as quick as they should be for that style of game, but also when they play closer to the pace of the rest of the Six Nations, they just look like a very impatient team who kick the ball away a lot.
Totally.
And
because they just want to make a play. Finn gets the ball and he's itching to make something happen, and there's the picture that's presented to him isn't really presenting anything. And he's just, and then that's when they end up softly giving the ball away. But one of the things that I will say is, like, for all of that softness, like at the weekend, that's the point that I think I would that I was almost trying to say when it comes to positives, is that I didn't see that softness. I saw a game where both sides, both forward packs and in general play, in terms of the physicality, they were pretty much cancelling each other out. It wasn't a case of Scotland missing tackles and falling off the place, but it was a case of France making offensive plays and Scotland then not in response. And it ended up being the margin that it was. But I could have pictured in years gone by, if Scotland had put in that defensive shift, maybe France would have got 27, but maybe Scotland would have got 28, or maybe they would have gone the other way. They could have got 25, but they didn't. They weren't able to get anything off. And granted, no Finn, no Hogg, but there's probably little nuggets of things just not quite being right, especially with what they're doing with the ball, which is so unlike this team.
It's true. It's not what we associate with them at all. But it's like a few key men gone, a few of the men they used to rely on to do that, not firing. Greg another year older.
Was Vern Cotter forced out too early?
It's possible, yeah. Like
I don't dislike Gregor Townsend.
I don't either. But it's quite a rapid progression that he's made in the coaching world. And when you look at other kind of old former player coaches kind of coming through,
taking it
slower than all that, and you can see like countless examples. Well, like obviously we have Ronan O'Gara now going playing his trade in the Crusaders.
That said, have you heard the rumours around him that are leaking in the New Zealand Herald at the moment?
No.
Well, they were saying that, and this is pure speculation based on media, whatever. But there's this rumor that the All Blacks job is going to be given to Scott Robertson, and that perhaps maybe Rog could either get the Crusaders gig or
join him in the All Blacks camp.
Yeah.
It's interesting stuff. Bit of an aside, but
for Scott Robertson, that's an example not of what you're talking about. Like that's a guy who's just come.
Well, he's not shooting up, but through only constant and just unabating excellence.
Yes.
But even when you look then within that same conference, the Blues had Tana Umaga head coach was probably a year too soon. And now they've demoted back down.
Yeah.
So you just don't know like when it's that recent. But like that being said, I do like Gregor Townsend. I do like what he's trying to do. I just it's not working. It's not working, and then all the talk after the game is always about how proud he is of the boys, even in kind of tame defeats, and the fact that there's still no away win in the Six Nations, barring Italy, is not good. And this French team, albeit vastly improved, are still that's the first time they played together, and it's as much as it's probably true of Scotland as well. That particular combination was very alien look to this Scotland team, and it was very disjointed as such. But to be that abject against a team that has been as poor as they have, that should have been their main target, especially because they have to go to Twickenham as well. That should have been what they were targeting for this year. And with that being the case, injuries or no, that's just not really good enough.
No.
And that's probably where some of the kind of more loud criticism, I guess, has come from, that I don't necessarily agree with fully. Like you're saying, I think there were positives, but it's just
because there's foundational stuff that's going okay. It's just that big picture stuff and that attack on which they base themselves, which I think they can get right. And then if they do get that right, they'll actually have the foundational stuff which is almost keeping them afloat at the moment to build on. That's very much
Edinburgh's improvement is definitely an improvement for them, because that was always even in those great times, like that great New Zealand defeat was still a defeat, and they were still losing more games than they were winning, that even in those years. So,
but not on Murrayfield, to be fair.
Not on Murrayfield, to be fair.
And that's the other thing that's now they've lost, and pretty tamely in both cases now in the last few months. Now they've lost 2 games. South Africa and Ireland both did for them in Murrayfield, which wasn't happening a year ago.
So that's marked disimprovement, and you can cite injuries or not, but that's something else is probably amiss.
Totally. And they're just not attacking as crisply or as sharply or with nearly as much pace as they were.
True.
And they need to get that back. That said, on the positive note, because I did think it was a ballerific game, I really did enjoy it, and I'm happy to see France playing and looking like Toulouse, and those young Toulouse lads who beat Leinster earlier on in the year, those are the boys to back.
Put your faith in them.
100%.
Why wouldn't you? It seems bonkers to me, and that includes Couton, who you keep calling for, because he keeps making classy plays in the top couture despite being snubbed by the national side. But he's an excellent 13. An embarrassment of riches, but they just do need some cohesion if it's going to be this chop and change. Some little fluid thing. So in the backline there, you had Dupont, Ntamak, Ramos and Huget and Medard on the bench. So it was a lot of Toulouse men there who all knew how to use the ball, because that's what they've been doing all season.
They actually they don't have nearly as much concern at all with their pack. I actually think their pack can step up. It's just on the hard days they're going to need a 7 to start with, and then you need in the finding of the 7 you fix the Van Mahina problem, because you move Vittoria from the 7.
I'm not forgetting Vittoria out of there, because I think Vittoria's having a great run of form over the last few games. It's just he's not a 7. He actually looks a lot like Peter O'Mahony sometimes playing from 6, because he's good in the line out, good for a read and a steal, but also kind of marauding around the park. It's not that he's a turnover man, but he's he does a lot of jobs, multi-jobbing all around. And it's you would not like a specialist 7 next to him. If you're putting him in the rows, you're much fitter than him and Lambie, and then someone else on the bench who's not Van Mahina. Just get him out of there. I can't stand looking at him. He's not just the intercept, but it's just the laziness of it. The 4 tackles from a few weeks ago was pretty revolutionary in my thinking about the man as well, because I was just looking at it going But how? He was on for so long, and he's such a big man. That's 4 tackles every quarter, or one tackle every 20 minutes.
Yeah.
What is he doing there?
Yeah.
And like for all that, when you look at the highlights or something, he's at fault for one of the tries, and it's at least one of the tries because he was at fault for one of the weekend as well. It's just he doesn't do enough. He needs to get out.
Yeah.
And
no, I don't.
Because they do have ample replacements.
I don't disagree, and yeah, for sure, it's all there for France. I mean, the question is, there's still a big hanging question mark, which is, you know, every game over the last 3 years that wasn't this game that just happened now, which was like, you know, everything has been chopping and changing, and he's been throwing shit at a wall, and this seems like it could stick. Hopefully he will, stick with it for a little bit.
Because like there've been little false dawns before, like the
100%.
Like what we were
the defense last year, they beat
defense.
England, and they had a great defense, and that their identity was this big physical team. There was no sense of the Toulouse that's in there now. And then they just
couldn't use the ball. That was their problem. Was just they couldn't use the ball to save their lives, but they could cling in, and then in a breaking moment, someone like Teddy Thomas could steal the game for them. And then in summer they got rid of him. Yeah, they completely got rid of the coach, defensive coach, got a new coach in who did implement a new attacking shape, which also looked good. They actually suddenly looked competent with ball in hand, where like flooding wide channels with centres and doing interesting, innovative things like that, because they wanted to pick Fiku on the wing, which they still. But yeah, like good attacking shape, and then just the defence couldn't muster anything, and we're shipping a ball load of tries.
That's it. It wasn't the All Blacks, but
it was the All Blacks,
were
but
not
it was
the same
just
team.
Like nothing about it was the same. And then they got rid of the attack coach.
Yeah, and then in the autumn there was nuggets of positivity again, but never any consistency in selection. And then obviously that result against
Fiji. Yeah.
And then they've come into this championship and performed as they've performed, and that's the thing, is that like there's no consistency from the top, so it's hard to say with any. It's hard to be convinced
or committal
that this is going to go one way or the other, but there's definitely potential
much
in
more
there.
Positive from France,
and it's a warning sign, like if you're Argentina or England and
or Ireland next week,
well that too, but if you're Argentina or England, you can't sleep on them. Can't sleep on them. They can play the game 100%. They can play the game.
Their catch pass is still great.
Yes, it is. Anyway, with that, I think we'll pivot on to the big game of the weekend. Welsh fans far and wide, the grins still firmly on faces, I dare say, and thoroughly deserved. I actually thought it was a bit of a scrappy do encounter. It reminded me a huge amount of the just from England's perspective. It reminded me a huge amount of the World Cup 2015 game. Just in the sense that they were beating them physically. They weren't like it was close, but England were having the edge on it. They had made the play, they had got the try, and they were just getting an edge on the game and putting it to the squeeze. But they never quite identified that they needed to kill it. And they were just going through the motions, being in the lead and being quite comfortable being in the lead and happy to sort of see the game out this way. But Wales were always just there, a score away. And then of course, Gareth Davis rushed in with that try, and England desperately tried to get it back and chipped that kick into the corner and lost it, and ended up costing them getting out of their pool in their own World Cup. That's like quite a harrowing memory. Surely some of those boys were involved, I'm sure. Farrell was, and it strikes me as somewhat bizarre that. And it goes back to our old critique of England. There's a lot good about this England team, but just as a team, they just culturally they just don't do introspection, and that's the thing. That's like when Ireland lose a game. And that's not to say that we don't sometimes repeat mistakes, because we do, but it's etched into the minds and the hearts of the public. Like it's worn, it's a scar that everybody wears, like a bad loss. The England game this year will be no different, but there's others, that game against Georgia in 2007 in the World Cup that we actually did win, but that's a scar that every Irish fan walks around with. And a good few others, but the little errors and memories of what mistakes were made. And constantly, even you go into media circles around Ireland, they're constantly thinking about, are we repeating the same mistakes that we made in this failure or this failure? With so many failures to pick from.
Yes, indeed.
But like what strikes me as so weird is to see England basically, in a daze make the same mistake that they made in what was the most embarrassing, episode in their modern rugby history, and
their most recent defeat against that team as well. The last time
Wales beat them, and it was a very similar game, and they got into a very similar mindset, I guess, where they just thought they were comfortable when they really weren't, and they had a very dangerous Wales nipping at their heels.
Yeah,
and it just didn't occur to it. Seemingly they got shocked by Wales's second wind.
Partly, they also gifted them. It was strange. Farrell's, in terms of introspection, I watched the post-match thing, and Farrell's main take on it was that they lost momentum and couldn't get it back, which is partly true, but
you also didn't do enough when you had it. That's the key. That's huge. They got that one try, but for me, and this is on Welsh fans are gonna be we're going to talk about how great Wales are in just a moment, but for me, when they had the foot on the throat, they had the advantage in the game. They never really went to press at home. It was always just tactical kicking, pin them back, win the collisions. When Wales had the ball, England didn't really allow them to do much with it for much of the game. Wales were very narrow, and they weren't getting much purchase basically for the entire time Anscombe was on the field, and but they were never you never felt that they had the urgency to kill the game. And England were picturing just a nice 1-score win and on we go, but Wales had other ideas, and it was
well, there's such an inherent danger in playing that way as well, which should be exposed in World Cups anyway, because you can't afford to be that conservative mindset. But they certainly for large parts of the first half, as I was thinking, it was just they were smashing into each other. They were both too narrow. Wales had a few little plays where they went wide straight away, got some purchase, but then it took them 4 or 5 rucks to get from that side to the other side of the pitch, even though the space was all out wide. And so there were wasteful possessions in the first half, aplenty. And they do have these teams these two particular teams really do like the idea of trying to run over one another for large parts of the game. But England they were slightly inaccurate. Wales were, what they did very well was what I asked them to do, which was slow down England's ruck ball. And sure enough, Youngs and Farrell didn't look anywhere near as assured without that massively fast tempo platform that was coming from the first 2 games, where they were just so utterly dominant against. Admittedly, and off the pace in terms of physicality, they were well off in Ireland in week 1, and then France were just completely rudderless as far as selection and pace. So they were kind of, despite it being 2 very solid wins and 5 points collected in each, it wasn't truly telling because they weren't slowed down yet. And it was of course a team's going to create that picture for them. How are they going to deal with it? It's not just going to be plain sailing, which is always where England go when they get 1 or 2 good wins. Is we must be in the picture for the best team in the world now. Come on, guys, we won 2 games in a row. We aren't we? We're favourites for the World Cup, right? And it's no, guys, vast improvement, definitely, and some of the personnel changes, the centre pairings they've landed with. Vast improvement. 100%. The fact that Curry is playing so well with Underhill to come back means that the 7 jersey is now going to be a 7. Whichever one of those gets the pick,
100%.
That's a vast improvement as well. Their back row looks more solid and balanced for it. But there are still some real problems, and one of them is a key one that keeps recurring for England is discipline. And it's all the chat from Eddie Jones leads me to believe that it won't get fixed, because his take on it was going we got the rough end of the stick with which is to be expected when you come away from home on the penalty count. And it's no, you did that. Your players did that, and one key man in that is someone who you've been flagging this for the last year pretty much, is Kyle Sinclair. As much as he made a load of tackles and is a great athlete, he's a head case and a liability, particularly after an hour-long shift when his head gone.
Very gifted, but he is the recurring theme from him over the November internationals was him, talking some ridiculous smack,
which happened again,
and then instantly making an error where he dropped a ball. We actually didn't drop any balls today immediately after talking smack, which is
him and Alan Wynne Jones were squaring off, and Alan Wynne was it was so obvious who was on tilt in that exchange. Alan Wynne is always in the middle of those fracas, and yet never at fault somehow, and never perceived as such by the refs. It's an amazing gift he has to always be there when it's kicking off, and to never be perceived as the bad guy, and seemingly always say the right thing to the ref, which he does remarkable consistency. But yeah, him and Sinclair, it was like an obvious thing between him and Gatland as well, to try and throw that boy on tilt, and it worked.
As soon as he tilts, he just loses the plot, and like you see, sometimes it manifests itself as a drop ball, and the other week it manifested itself as, I think, 3 really bad,
including 2 consecutive ones that were easy exit, or kind of like exit / attacking set now for Wales, because it was doing what all England Wales games do, especially in the second half when it's tight, is like going across between 10-metre lines, and Sinclair just needless penalty gifts Wales attacking platform after a few phases, another needless silly penalty from Sinclair, 3 points, and they're back there. That was when in the period when they were just chipping away, and England were allowing them to do so, and actually just welcomed a few other things, like Farrell then kicking out on the full shortly thereafter was just a sign of things like slipping out of control for England, because as Farrell does, kind of the team do as well, because he is very, very much the spine of it. But it was like all of that came from, and Sinclair was taken off then in pretty much in direct response to that, as well as being, I think, over the hour mark for prop is obviously like time to replace him anyway. But he's just as good as the performance had been before. Then it's almost moot.
It's
because
totally
of how bad those plays were and how catastrophic in terms of playing Wales back in.
Right now, his presence in the team is a problem, in the sense that it has now cost them. I think one could argue cost them the game, and with it perhaps the Grand Slam. And right now that's going to keep happening. Whether or not that can be fixed, there's no way of knowing when you don't know the guy and you don't know the context of the camp and everything else. But like if it is being addressed, the addressing of it isn't working, and if it's not being addressed, it needs to be, because his mindset and his temper is affecting his game. His game, which generally speaking is very good, but there's just something's not right there, and it's killing them, and it has killed them. This was one game that it got away from them, and I do cite those 2 consecutive penalties back to back as being pretty seminal in terms of Wales's recovery and England's slipping away from that, and they just kind of slipped out of that game then for large periods, and then Wales with things like Dan Biggar coming on and just managing to spark everything into life. I think there's one note, like, because I think generally speaking, like, there's the discipline is the one thing that you'd isolate. The other thing that was sort of revealed just in terms of how they're defending. I mean, Curry has license to go for 1 or 2 and he's on, but there's no, like, their defensive line is very much fan out, push up. And like Wales went for the variation of a couple of pick and jams, trying to get through the soft centre of that narrow blitz. The other option, of course, is to sort of flash it wide, which I think if they'd committed more to, they might have got a bit more purchase in that first half. But like with that defence, you're actually limiting yourself to quite few turnovers. I mean, you're basically backing your defence to win collisions enough.
That's always been the way the Eddie Joneses England have gone about things.
And that's the thing. But then Wales,
it's only a recent innovation to add a 7 to the mix.
And then Wales went and scored a 40 odd phase, I think 34 phase try against them, and that's the other side of the fence. You're 60 minutes into a game and you're relying on just your barnstorming physicality. You don't have that turnover game to lean on, and that's nothing against Tom Curry, who actually is good at that game. It's to do with the setup. And it facilitated Wales being slow and methodical, and then when they got the chance, taking it. And then the other note that I would still make about where England are at is, I think that, and you and I think disagree on this somewhat, but I think that the 15 jersey Elliot Daly's playing there at the moment, I think it's sort of an empty jersey, and I think as the games go on, like, Farrell's going to need a little bit of help in the distribution game. What they have now is what's getting more settled, and what looks a very, very, very solid centre partnership. A lot of optimism, and for all of the issues they had at 12 last year, Wales did attack that channel quite a bit and didn't get any purchase through Tuilagi and Slade. So defensively, offensively, looking good. That's not something that can be changed. The right wing, they vary up a bit, but the left wing is Johnny May, and it's the 15 jersey which is currently occupied by Elliot Daly,
formerly Mike Brown.
Still
should be Alex Good.
I mean, that's what I think, but that's the obvious answer. But I think I would settle at the moment for just considering that, like, I don't know if Elliot Daly is nailed on in that jersey. His coverage for a couple of the kicks wasn't great. I'm not sure if he was the guy who was under the Josh Adams.
He was the guy, but he was also he was very narrow. That, like, he was coming at it from, as Bod would highlight in coverage, he was at a very negative angle, whereas it was the Welsh winger who was attacking it, and he was kind of flailing. But
He doesn't have the big plays in him, I don't think. And what he does have is a good kicking game and a good little distribution game at times. But I actually think that Slade brings a lot of what he brings anyway, in terms of the skill set. And I just think that that's a jersey. If you're looking to add a new dynamic into what they do with the back line, that's the jersey. There's an interesting shout. On the wing. It's an interesting shout. Yeah. You need help in the backfield. They need to get that pendulum going.
Definitely.
Good. But, yeah, it's just a thought is all it is, just a nugget.
Yeah, a little one. It's less of a vital problem as the penalties, because as soon as they could cut some of them out, they could have even won that game. Despite how it was going and how Wales have shown themselves to be one of the top second half teams in the world as well. I think in terms of they manage their fitness and they can strike in many different ways, and they always recognise it in the second half, which is very, very good to see. So I suppose we should talk more about Wales now, because England lost that game and lost their bonus point as well.
Yeah,
great fun.
It was that last 20 was as that last 20 was as compelling as a little sequence of rugby as I've seen in quite a while. It was the context of it, the atmosphere. Yeah, it was incredible. I think I'd like to meet the man who didn't jump up out of his seat when Josh Adams took that ball. It was incredible.
Yeah. And what a take!
Yeah. I really respect the hustle of this Welsh team, but they have the one of the things is just that it's just been instilled in them over time. It's just a irreconcilable, self-belief. They're not going to be, deterred, and no matter how a game goes, there's almost a jouet aspect to what they're doing. They're very much sticking to. No, it's not like, harried into them, process driven. They have their processes, but they have boys who make plays all over the pitch, so they stay in games, they believe in one another, and then sooner or later somebody can make a game-breaking play, and they back themselves to do it, and more often or not these days they are doing it. I really respect the hustle. They take games to very different places. They have many different styles of playing games,
many different ways of scoring tries, which is something that we complement in a team. You want to have different pictures to your tries, and Wales have myriad different ones. And sure, they were showing a pick and jam game that obviously caught England a bit unawares because they weren't expecting a Welsh team to be going for that line of attack. They cited that as a way to get at England, and it worked in the second half. We were questioning it in the first. We really felt they were too narrow, and that was where England were getting the better of them in that first 40. But just they stuck at it and managed to change it up enough in the second half to just get those tries and get that win, as well as clawing their way back in, staying in it. And really, one of the things that I really like about them is just how effective all of the men are at slowing their defensive breakdown down, or slowing the offensive breakdown of the other team down.
Yeah, their defensive breakdown is very good at slowing the ball down.
Yeah, they're like it, and it's little things like Alan Wynne-Jones is great at it, like just either holding his feet and then falling slightly on the wrong side, and then managing to manufacture a situation where he's somehow pinned despite having orchestrated the fall. And it's all just very Richie McCaw levels of mouse. But it's not just him, it's like anyone who goes in, the tackler is always slightly slow. Like he at minimum adds 2 seconds to the ruck. The Welsh tackler minimum adds 2 seconds to their ruck, and more often than not it's closer to 5, and it just makes their defence so much more effective. And Edwards Blitz is still very physical. They're still quite a big team, which is something that Gatland has kind of favoured for years, but there are fewer kind of gaps, like Cuthbert being on one wing. I would have backed Cuthbert to not make that play that Adams made at the very end.
As bad as I think Gatland got it for those years when the back line was, Phillips, Bigger, Roberts, Davis, North, Cuthbert, Halfpenny. That was that kind of Warren Ball era. That was the back line that sort of typified the ugly style of play.
Very bludgeoning kind of, not very Welsh expansive
which
kind of
was
style.
Good enough to win Six Nations that were played to a poor standard, and not good enough to ever beat a Southern Hemisphere team ever. But what you have to say, like, we did a video when we started this channel, it was sort of titled, I think the title of it was like, why Warren Gatland isn't the right choice for the Lions tour, which we believed at the time. And one can debate whether or not he got that right or wrong, but ultimately it was a tied series, and he did end up varying it and getting Sexton and Farrell in there, which was the right call ultimately. And I'd come to really, really respect the guy's hustle as a coach, and I think he is an elite coach. He does, the way he has this team set up, they're reaping the benefits right now of when you get an elite coach and you put faith in him to the nth degree.
Yeah, because now it's
12 years in
year.
charge.
Yeah.
So that team that he's coached now has seen every picture. So they're like you say, that they fall on the wrong side and they play fast and loose sometimes with the offside games. They only conceded 3 penalties in a game that was massively important with like a load of niggle in it, with a load of with everything at stake. And they only conceded 3 penalties because they have muscle memory. They know what they can get away with and what they can't get away with. It's like your point on Danny Cipriani. He's become a much more mature player in the sense that he's seen the pictures that can go wrong. He knows a lot more about when he tries this, what's more likely to happen in these big games against these big teams. And Wales have seen it all over the last 12 years. And
but the fundamentals that are built in, things like that defence, has remained pretty consistent, and though the personnel are rotating, the system remains. And that's where it's like, considering things in World Cup cycles is something that most teams do, but Wales are really kind of beyond that, because they're in more of a decade plus cycle of building a team. So it's great maturity. It's the best ever winning streak of any Welsh team as of the weekend, which is excellent. That's fair play to them, but richly deserved. They had a fantastic year last year, and despite being outmatched, it felt, in Dublin, they proved themselves more clinical than the Irish, because they were getting dominated on possession. We're still nicking tries and staying in the game, and we're in it right till the very last play. And that was the last loss that they've had in the test, in a test jersey. That's an amazing run, And
they're just solid enough at all areas and adaptable enough that they can like when they play a team like Ireland. Or a team with a really strong scrum, like, they haven't got the best scrum in the Six Nations, but they can hold the scrum up if they have to. They can do a decent line out maul if they have to, and they can defend it, if they have to, or they can pick off a couple of line outs, but it's not their area of expertise. But they'll defend the legs off you. Like, their defense attack, they can attack in many different areas, many different ways. It's hard to identify, what's their strongest area of attack. You see them doing offloads in the tights sometimes.
You see Liam Williams off kick return being very effective.
And that's the thing. It's versatility. They can go in all kinds of different ways, and then they come into each game with a plan, and everybody buys into the plan, and they attack. They attack in certain ways where they think the team are weak. They front up in certain areas where their opposition think that they have an advantage, and they're rarely outsmarted. And like this, I can't speak highly enough. Like, they were in a clunky position in that game where they were actually attacking too narrow. They were not, like, they actually, for all of it, their defence had stopped England's go forward, which was great, but they hadn't been able to generate much go forward of their own. And it was looking like one of those games, except England had made the game breaking play and got the try, and they just clung on in again. They got the little break from Kyle Sinclair, chipped a couple of points on the board, and then that sequence, which is not, it's just another string to their bow, because it was a very Irish try that they ended up scoring. It was very narrow, it was very slow, they went for a lot of phases, but England resourced their width really well. So they don't compete at the breakdown. So it was just an obvious thing. They just kept going, kept it slow, and eventually they got sucked in. And the guy who we've touched on but haven't given enough credit to yet, Dan Biggar, who came onto the field like a man possessed, and really does have when he's on song.
He's a big game man. We've known this about him for years. He turns up, he plays his best games in Osprey's colours when it's like quarter-final, semi-final, final time. And similarly for Wales, in the World Cup, he was making serious plays as well. And even though Wales in the last World Cup, we felt were a little stagnant in some of their attack, which was unlike them. And apart from a few little moments of brilliant that felt more like heads-up play, they managed to think their way around England very well. But it was against Australia they were very disappointing, wasn't it?
Yeah, and they tamely out against South Africa.
Yeah. But in that South Africa game, Dan Biggar did produce a moment similar to a moment in the game where a chip and chase that he gathered is all of his own, that's led to an attacking set that I do think they got a try from in that instance. But it's like he is some man for just
that pass quick with the rush on him off the left out to George North, which was the game breaking pass of that set. Another good line from Corey Hill to finish it off. But that was Beautiful.
And it was Dan
beautiful
Bigger at the base of that. It was an assist for Dan as well, because he was playing scrummy at the ensuing ruck.
I mean, like, we'll get into Ireland obviously in due course and talk about, like, well, one of the areas that really we lament is just the fact that they don't have guys in the back line who make plays when the game stagnates. Outside of maybe Stockdale, but Wales are just full of them. Jonathan, like, if the game is stagnant and then at a moment, Liam Williams will produce something, or Jonathan Davis will produce something,
or George
North, and then Josh Adams on the right wing with that just tackerful, masterful,
great take,
crowd raising, ear thumping, heart beating
from England.
Beautiful take for a try. It was it was really magic, and in terms they have a lot of qualities to them. They really do. I don't know if they're the best team in the world, but I think they're probably the most versatile. They're one of the toughest to beat. And they're purring along very nicely. It's true. It's gonna make, like, they're obviously, like, teams. Ireland were in a place where they were very confident, and they looked unbeatable, and then you got a taste when they were beaten you're getting a taste right now of just how brittle perhaps some of that confidence can be, especially when it's in a team that doesn't traditionally dominate. But right now they look like they have a lot of strings to their bow, and they have other things. They have a very solid base to fall back on, and then a lot of different places they can move the game. So it's
definitely it's all positive. They're certainly contenders for this World Cup. And getting right up there. There's an argument for having them creep up the rankings towards second as well. I'm sure
they'll say so.
Like they're
themselves
dangerous.
In the Springboks, all optimism right now, I would say.
For both of them, compared to a slightly stuttering 1 and 2 in New Zealand and Ireland, who are, like, struggling with the pace of all that and that target on their back somewhat, and just questioning. Whereas Wales have just been on the up and up, and having bled so many players, having so many, like, just so many who've had game time there, who know how to come in and work the system, so much so that you can afford to leave Dan Bigger on the bench now, which is something that they never could before in years gone by. But now it just means you can change games in those instances when, like, Anscombe did very well for 60 minutes despite not probably getting the better of it and managing to work his way around that England defence. So you can bring Bigger on, like, amazing. Like, that's what you want.
And Reece Patchell in the wings,
Patchell waiting there. He was back playing for Scarlets, I think. So back on the pitch anyway, but another fine option. And we were kind of wondering who's going to nail down this 10 jersey, but then maybe it doesn't matter if they can take games to such different places that you can just rotate them.
That's huge. Like, that's huge. That's a whole other world. Like, I remember people talking about when one player gets dropped from the team, it's always the sense of, like, I'd be disappointed in him. But I like the idea of having guys in who are just different tools for different tasks. And Wales definitely have the luxury to play with that idea a bit going forward. That said, huge 2 weeks coming up for them. They're on course for a Grand Slam. They got to go to Murrayfield. They got to play Ireland. It's still a very, very daunting task, and this is a great competition in terms of just showing up your weak moments. I mean, you're going to be tested in a lot of different areas
for sure.
Murrayfield, like, with Finn Russell back, for all of Scotland's woes, if they do what they can do and get it right, it's a tough game. It's a tough game for any team. So they're going to have to be on song for that. And then we know what Ireland can bring is that physical dominance and control that can come from the halfbacks.
Always a tough game, generally one score game when Ireland face Wales either way. So they won't be underestimating the Irish at all.
No.
Like, it's whether they can go to Murrayfield and just kind of kick on, not falter, not run into a Scotland resurgent all of a sudden, maybe, I don't know. But, like, you never know in this competition who's gonna get it, and that's why it did blow it open, because England not only did not get the win but not the bonus points. So now they're back on 10 points. I think Wales on 12, despite 3 wins from 3.
I think no matter what, if Wales lose a game, England are going to get, because Wales didn't max out against Italy. They're probably not going to max out against Ireland, where England did. England obviously maxed out against France, where Wales didn't. England are winning the bonus point battle with anybody, I would say.
Yes.
So, like, the picture for Ireland to win is probably England to lose to Scotland and Ireland to beat Wales, and then the picture for Wales to win is just to win a Grand Slam. I think it's Grand Slam or zip for the Welsh, which makes the equation all that simpler.
Yeah, and it's very, very, it makes for an exciting last 2 weeks. which is great. And tremendous game. I would say probably the match of the tournament so far. Was that Wales England game, and because it was decided by tries, class moments. Had it been decided by an error, as we had feared it might, and it looked like it could be, it was that kind of game. But the fact that it was big game-breaking plays that made it. I was very much aware of the opinion that it's like, if the try comes, if it's a try that wins the game in that kind of context, that's what makes it great. But you know what? But if it goes to an error, you can't say it's great, because it's not.
All of those Wales England games that were decided by those errors, you think of that loose kick.
Jonathan Davis, I think.
That
from the end zone that ended up
being caught. But that was a Gatland team as well, with a lot of the same players, and it's that muscle memory and that ability that England seem to lack, but Wales definitely have, to just learn from those mistakes and to do things better, and to acknowledge and understand that they were in that situation where this game was taking a very similar shape to previous games, and England were probably going to eke it out, and then to change it up and make the game-breaking moments and take chances when they come, and just have that 34 phase set in them that wasn't in them before. They're adding layers.
That's progress.
It's all good. It's all good.
Sure. Well done, Wales. Victory is sweet.
100%. Not so sweet was
the Irish perspective. Ireland, Italy, Ireland, 1626. That's not 60 points.
Well, actually, I made the point during the game, which has now been picked up on because Shane Horgan made the point in post-match analysis, that it looked very similar, and I touched on it earlier in the show, to the 2007 World Cup. In the sense that, and like for like World Cups for non-Irish fans are just World Cups, some go good, some go bad, but like the sort of over dramatic Irish way of thinking about the world, we really do live our failures, and they cut to the bone, and it's very much like, for any Irish rugby fan, it's very much a scar that's worn, and it came from a place of such optimism and such bullishness going into a tournament with Brian O'Driscoll's and Ronan O'Gara's and Paul O'Connell's and Dennis Hickey's and Shane Horgan's and so many great players, and then they showed up in that tournament and were just abysmal from minute one. But the reason that the picture from the Italy game was so similar was that the team were already out of form. We knew that. They had time to sort of get it right, and then they weren't, and they were on the field visibly frustrated with one another, with referees, with everything around them, just getting more and more angry and verbalizing that anger. Their body language was horrendous. All of them were just all over the place. There wasn't a lot of leadership coming from them, and that was very similar to 2007. I mean, in 2007 they started with a game against Namibia where they had won it. I think like a game against Namibia, they got the bonus point, I think, just or maybe they didn't even. They won it like 32 to 17 or something like that against Namibia for one of the top sides in the world, and it was like a bit of a scare. And then everyone's like, okay, well, look, they've got a week, they got another game against one of the tier 2 teams in Georgia where they're gonna they'll get it right, their chance to get the patterns together, ease into the tournament. And then they had that scare against Georgia where they were down, and Georgia actually crossed the line. They won it 14 to 10, and Georgia crossed the line in the last play and got held up, and that was the game. And again, in that game there was such, they were trying things and they weren't coming off, and they were getting biting at one another all the time, looking full of frustration. And then it was like, okay, well, we're still in the tournament. We got that French game, and they were actually they got stuffed by France, but they were actually in the tournament going into the last weekend as well. When they lost to Argentina, but if they got a bonus point win against Argentina, they probably would have got through out of the group.
Right.
But it didn't happen because nothing was right from minute one, and no matter how much they worked at it, and
seemingly they worked quite hard, overtrained a little as well for some of the chat.
And that's the thing. It's like they're just, right now the shape is very similar. They got stunned by England, and they were frustrated last week against Scotland. They looked a picture of upset against Italy, and it was just there was just this sense of impending frustration, and it takes a similar shape in the sense that it's still a win, we're still in it, but and then we could still be in it going into the last weekend. But right now it doesn't look like it doesn't look like they're going to fix it the normal way, to me, in terms of where their mindset is. I mean, I think the worst thing that could could do for these players right now is one of those Monday review sessions where everything gets torn asunder, and we look at this error and this error and this error, and we call out you and you, and it ends up being a disciplinary thing. They look like they're not shorn of anything really. They look like they're wearing baggage all over them. Yeah, and it's a very troubling picture. If you're an Irish fan, it's just a very familiar and troubling picture right now. And that 2007 World Cup catastrophe put them basically in a year-long funk. They had to lose the coach and a couple of personnel before they got any mojo back. So hopefully, I think it's there's nuggets of it in the body language. I don't think it's the whole picture, but I think it's right now they're in actually a very dangerous place. I think they look all kinds of wrong, and there's rugby related reasons as well that we'll get into. But it's just a troubling picture for me at the moment. Sure. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, it's definitely an argument. I definitely see. There's a bit more there's a fragmented feel where last year it was the green machine. It was like all for one, everyone knowing their jobs, everyone kind of multi-jobbing but also micro-jobbing, and everyone buying into it while it's working. It's much easier to be that process driven, but when it's slightly off, the fact that the processes aren't working means you're going to throw blame either way, probably left or right of you while you're on the pitch. But it's also, they're not helped by not having the freedom to express themselves in terms of how they actually play the game a lot of the time. Some certain players, particularly backline, just are very functional in this setup, and when it's not working, therefore there's very little scope for it to change on the fly, because how could it? Because we're just going to keep doing the same thing.
The answer is one guy, and that's Jacob Stockdale. Yeah, he's the only guy in the Irish backline who can make something happen from nothing. Yeah, who doesn't actually necessarily have to be put into a giant hole to run through something. He can actually step a guy. He can show a bit of hustle. He can just up and decide to run a tracking line that he sees. And that outside of that, everything is like a functional cog in there. And it's definitely one of a few concerns, and it reveals itself in what we do with the ball. Yeah, I mean, one of the things from a rugby perspective that we've spoken about for Ireland is like the NFL comparison, where Sexton's your quarterback, Joe Schmidt is your so he's calling the plays on the fly, but Joe Schmidt is your sort of coach, and he's the guy who's putting all the plays together, and Sexton's the quarterback through which he drives them, and everyone else is just running the play and the formation that's instructed of them. And it's just within that context, it's a very interesting way. There's loads of cool NFL rugby comparisons and different teams who do things different ways. Like I would say that France would be the anti-NFL establishment in rugby, like did nothing to do with it, and no comparisons to be made. But like for an NFL side to have basically as limited an offensive playbook as Ireland have, strikes me as a bit shocking. Like if that's the way you want to go about things, like it seems to me like it was slight different variations of similar formations all around Sexton with 2, 3, 4 options in a very narrow space. And teams eventually are just going to pack that space and figure it out, and you're starting to see that happen. And one of the things that teams have figured out is that within that context, it's just about not getting Johnny on the floor, and things are disrupted for at least a phase. And that's such a problem with just not having that second distributor option. And like you were saying, having Bundy Aki there and asking him to do that is not the same as putting someone like Carberry in there. They had Rob Kearney in a distribution role for part of that game.
Yeah, he slotted in at second screen at one point, and it was just like, but he's not a great passer of a football, so why would you do it? Yeah, like I just don't know. Like
to be fair to Robbie, he actually made the play. He did in that context. He made a little quick pass, but it's not. Again, it's just not his game.
No, it's not. It's one that's going to keep recurring, because it feels like we're very, very, very structured, but also just too narrow. Yeah. And it's it's not just that either. You were making the good point that because we're such a possession based team, everyone's running a support line, being support the guy who's about to go to the floor so that we can pack that breakdown, get quick ball from that, and then go again. But no one is offloading, and not to it's not that no one's looking, because during at the game of the weekend, Ty Furlong was winning contacts, getting a hand free looking left and right, but there's no one there.
Yeah, he got one away, I think,
he got one,
every contact he was
looking for it, and there's just no one running that line.
Yeah, which they're running very pessimistic, I would say, tracking runs, in the sense that, like, what Joe wants from his players, because Ireland basically are a team that like to put 40 phases together, like to turn and 20 phases in most sets. They want, they want to tire the defence out and make them win tackles, and if you want to do that, ball retention is at a premium. That's what you have to do. That matters more than anything else. It's your fundamentals. So what Joe wants is the assurance that if we are stuck behind the gain line, the forwards need to be there. We need to be able to make sure that we have the ball again, so we can go again. But what that's being done now at the expense of, when we do make a line break, like Keith Earls did, and on a couple of occasions I think we did break through, and there was just the wide shot or the overhead shot reveals it so perfectly that there's just no Irish player on this field expecting his team to make a line break, and you see virtually every other top tier nation turn those into tries, because your scrummy's running an inside angle, or your centres is picked it up and he's tracking, or your 10 is following the ball and he's after it, and it's just none of it. There's absolutely none of it. So when Ireland do break through, they just gain the amount of meters that the guy who breaks through runs, rather than linking,
unless it's Stockdale, because Stockdale will chip it over the top and gather and score a try.
That's it. Like, and the two Stockdale tries, like, for examples, like Keith Earls had a couple of line breaks, and he obviously isn't Stockdale, so he didn't do anything wrong, but he wasn't able to turn them into tries because he's not Stockdale. But Stockdale, when he was put into that space in the All Blacks game, he just had to make it all happen. He just didn't actually have that much support. And the same is true in the Scotland game when he was put into that hole. I mean, if you take a wide view of it, there's no one within an ass's roar of him, and he has 3 Scots to beat, and he just beats them with a bit of gas and a bit of hustle. But that's, like, it's a recurring thing, and it's one of the rugby, like, for all of the psychology talk and the throwbacks to 12 years ago, it's a very rugby related problem. That's just another type of try that you don't see Ireland score. That's very common, like club rugby, test rugby, it's everywhere. Tier 2, tier 1, turning line breaks into tries is something that a lot of coaches value that Ireland just don't do.
Kick return is another one.
Kick return is another one.
And it's a sacrifice you make when you pick Rob Kearney for defensive surety, which he surely gives in this particular defensive system, which demands a lot of your backfield coverage, which means you have to have him in there.
He's elite.
Basically.
Like you just, Stockdale's great, and Stockdale's a good man off kick return, and you'd like to see it's like Keith Earls got a lot of praise at the weekend. He had to move into centre, attacked quite. He attacked with a bit of pace and a bit of energy.
Found his try well.
Defended pretty loosely
from the 13 channel.
Hayward, it's not
Hayward made a mug of him at one point, I remember.
That's right. And but for me, and this is sort of sacrilege in a lot of Irish things, like, for me, I think you got it, like, that's a jersey that you got to do something with when you've Rob Kearney at fullback, and right now Keith Earls just isn't it. He's not a game breaker. He's not someone who's going to make something happen. And you got to give other younger guys a go at it.
It's like, what's a winger for? That's the question we always ask with it, like, because it seems to be something that we routinely forget and then remember in an Ireland jersey, like, because Tommy Bowe was a surefire starter, but then in the moments that he was injured or unavailable, you were seeing wings occupied by Dave Kearney and Andrew Trimble, and it's like, they're very fine players, and I have a lot of respect for them. It's like, they're not game breakers at all, and, like, you're looking at all the top teams and who they got on the wing. Like, Wales have your George Norths, England have your Johnny Mays, there's Rico Ioane, and there's all kinds of, like, glorious men who you can just give the ball to with 15 yards of space and one man in front of him. And that's the whole, it's not even manufacturing a 2-on-1, it's a 1-on-1. And you're backing your winger to turn that into a try more often than not. And, like, Ireland just do not do that. They value things like defensive coverage and stuff. And, like, this is why I'm pretty sure Adam Byrne is out of the picture, because he has had a few dodgy defensive moments in a Leinster shirt that I've bore witness to. He's not the finished article, but I'm just thinking, like, if we're going to be exclusively box kick exiting, why not have him there?
He
is the best we have at that exact skill.
I agree with that point, but I think that we absolutely shouldn't be exclusively box kick exiting.
That's the more pertinent point.
And that is the more pertinent point, because teams are like, and you saw England do it to just the embarrassment of Joe, really, in the sense that they took a restart and they knew everything that was going to happen from the moment they kicked it off to that corner. They knew Murray was going to kick it out, and, like, it's not, Ireland under Schmidt haven't always been like that. In the sense that one of the pictures that you used to see is Sexton lining up, like if we got a penalty in our own 22, Sexton's lining up the long kick, which he would usually take on, but about 20% of the time he'd just tap and go and flash it out left and see what's on. Like that's something.
There's a little bit less adventure in what we're doing for sure, but that's probably a lack of confidence too. The other thing that's not helping with that is that Conor Murray is not playing well, and like that whole game is really built around the exceptional nature of Conor Murray's form over the last few years, whereby like yes, you know we're going to do it, but there's still nothing you can do about it because the kicks are so pinpoint, and so the hang time is such that it's still not even a 50-50 because we're kind of on the offense, because you've sometimes arrived too early or you're too stationary, whereas the attacking wingers arriving just in time to get a good leap. That kind of stuff isn't happening anymore because Murray's slightly off the pace. His passing isn't very crisp at all either, which is leading to the forward runners being checked before they can kind of put on a bit of footwork or try and win the gain line, which is where we want to attack.
I've heard he actually came out with an interview. I wish I could remember who the interview was with. I think it was in the Irish Times on Saturday, the day before the game, and was talking about the fact that he's still very much struggling with a shoulder injury, which is causing him to lose a bit of muscle mass on his left side. And
that's not good.
It isn't good. He never actually did get the surgery during all that time he was off.
Oh.
I don't think.
I thought he did.
No, and he's still. I think he's still struggling with it.
Interesting, and, but yeah, well, like it's still. We were making the point last week that it's like there's no point in talking about building depth if when it's going as wrong with your starters that you can't yank them out of there and replace them.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
that's the problem. That's all on Joe actually, which is like someone that we like to trust in Joe. We do like to trust in Joe. He's done a lot for this country and for the province of Leinster as well, and he's got pretty much everything right. But he does not use his bench at all in terms of, like, particularly the backs. Like, he just doesn't change things with them. It's too reliant on Murray Sexton, which is a problem in and of itself because it's now getting figured out and we're a bit too narrow. So it shouldn't be all that reliant on those two anyway. But the fact that when they're playing poorly, and it's like Sexton's form is being called into question, I actually don't think he's been doing too badly. I just don't think we've been getting that much service or purchase or go forward anyway, and off nine we've been a little bit sloppy, but Murray has been poor consistently every game, and it's like despite that Cooney's only had around 15 minutes of game time in this whole tournament, and that's just surely wrong.
It is, and it's the truth of Ireland definitely lies somewhere between what you saw against Italy at the weekend and what you saw in Dublin against the All Blacks and across last year, and away in Australia and at the Six Nations. But I think it's very fair to talk about what they do with the ball and how they find tries, and just like there's so many things missing. I mean, you talked about kick return, you talked about tracking runs to convert line breaks into tries, and you talk about when they have the ball, where they attack. I think you give a shout out to Squidge Rugby in an analysis video. He was talking about they only operate within the 2 15-metre channels. Yeah. They don't tend to use the tram line so often, except if it's on like a strike play.
Yeah.
Like
or if Joey Carberry's in there.
But basically they run narrow plays within narrow parts of the pitch. They don't vary it enough. They don't use the full pitch when they're attacking the ball. They don't offload. And your scope for scoring tries within that context basically gets narrowed in to the point where it zooms in on physical dominance or a set piece strike play right off a playbook, and that's
those are the two pictures.
Those are the two pictures we have, and in terms of scoring tries, it just makes the game a whole lot more difficult. And I don't think if this was to be mentioned, perhaps in the New Zealand media, the flipping point that would come off is that it's personnel driven. He's made the game plan for the players he has, and I actually don't think that's true at all. He's not picking certain guys and picking guys who can do functional jobs for him because that's what he feels comfortable doing. And then just another narrow point is because the line-out obviously is a whole other kettle of fish. Sean Cronin's getting a lot of stick, but I was watching a lot of those line-outs and the timing, the timing is so off. I mean, when you're at the back of the line-out, as a couple of them went wrong, Nugget's going to have thrown the ball before you jump, just the way it works, because the ball is going to take a little while to get there. So you're waiting on him to jump. He obviously has to throw it at a reasonable cue, and I don't know whose responsibility it is to sort of get that exactly accurate or whose responsibility it is right now to call everything. I think it was Quinn Rue at the weekend.
It might have been O'Mahony though.
But it might have been O'Mahony. And then, there was a few times when at the back of the line out, the ball was actually thrown to a reasonable height, but the guy at the back of it was on his way down by the time it got there.
Yeah.
And that's just really, really sloppy.
Yeah.
And that's a consistent theme in the absence of Dev.
Yeah.
But not to defend Cronin too much, who did have a poor game. But I think there's Cronin, there's an argument. You're a player. You play well when you get there. But there's also, not to pile in too much on Dear Joe here, but there's also an argument that a school of thought that there's, from a coach's perspective, there's a sense of trying to get the best out of your players. And it comes to speculation when you guess about why, but Sean Cronin, for basically the entirety of the Joe Schmidt era, has been underwhelming in an Ireland jersey and exceptional in a Leinster jersey. And for whatever reason, Joe's not getting the best out of him, and he's potentially a very elite player who's never delivering in a test jersey. And that may be all down on him, but I don't know. There's so many problems that it's so hard to call us the second best team in the world. Really, it's so difficult.
It's true. Well, it's something that constantly, I'm sure, it grinds the gears of all the Welsh fans who watch, because they can just see so many beautiful ways of playing the game, and Ireland played very ugly. Played in a very ugly way that's very dismissive of things like the kick return try or the line break try, like we're saying. And it's like, how can we be the second best at a game when we don't score all the tries that are available in said game? And that's like, I suppose it's just by consistently doing the job well and winning all those games in a row, which is what happened. The rankings are slightly skewed anyway, and there's also the gap has narrowed such that the top 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 teams can kind of take scalps off each other anyway, so it's not that big of a divide. So it's a bit arbitrary, but it's certainly it's in need of remedy, because it's certainly frustrating from a Leinster fan perspective, because there's a little bit too much, I'm going to say Munster, about the way we attack in the backline, because we were criticising Munster's lack of shape in the backline this season, where you're looking at the personnel there and you're thinking, these are all elite players. This whole backline is actually pretty much international calibre. Why aren't they linking and scoring a lot of tries? And you're just looking at it, it's like the answer is they just haven't really gotten any shape at all, other than it goes 10, 12, 13 full back winger, and that's just universally what happens. We're going to suck them in and then go wide, and it's like, that's not how the game works anymore.
It's rugby from the 70s.
It's crazy to be doing that. And similarly, Leinster and Connacht also attack with a bit of flair, and Ulster use up the tempo and attack with good variation, but in Ireland they're nearly not allowed to do so. There's very little heads up play from any centres. Whoever's in the centres, it looks like they're trying to do a little kind
Gary
of
Ringrose.
impression of even Gary Ringrose, when he's there, looks more like Henshaw or Aki than he does Gary Ringrose, whereas in a Leinster jersey he is a fulcrum in attack, and he has license to play a bit of loose heads up play.
The best Gary Ringrose moments, outside of the Scotland game last year where he was able to distribute a bit and played really well, the best Gary Ringrose moments you see in an Ireland jersey is when someone inside him has just screwed up, and then there's a bit of a breaking ball and he can go and pounce on it, and then he can actually make a few yards and then show just how classy he is. But he very rarely gets played into the game. To be fair to Ireland, I think they do, in terms of their general shape, they've acknowledged that Stockdale's a guy they want to get involved more. Joe doesn't want to shake up the personnel, but he's happy with Stockdale in there, and he acknowledges that Stockdale is a likely source of tries. So they want to get him in space. They want to manipulate space and put him in it, which is good, but I just think they need a bit more of that. In terms of these are all very macro problems that we're discussing, and they're not the kind of thing that you fix in the year of a World Cup. It's true. We're playing in this way,
so we're going to the World Cup in this way.
I just think there's a couple of things. There's a couple of things that need improving. I think Keith Earls needs to be replaced with someone like Jordan Larmour, and I'm not sure if it's going to be Larmour or it could be Conway. There's a couple other guys in the fringes looking to get in there, but I think that 14 jersey needs to be a game breaker like Stockdale is. 2 class wingers, and then you have Rob Kearney as your fulcrum that holds things together defensively, and then when Kearney goes, I really do feel like Carberry's the guy that should come in there, change it up, defend it. Well, that's the thing. These are the little fixes that I think we would like to see that will get the back line firing. And then the only other thing is that right now he has 4 centres that are going to the World Cup who are Henshaw Aki, Farrell, and Ringrose.
Don't twist the tape.
Sorry. Sorry. So you've got, I think Ringrose is a nail on for the playing. And then of the other three, I think rather than take all four of them, he needs to probably lose one and bring in another distributor.
Yeah.
Because when Ringrose goes down, you still need a bit of dynamism in the centre. And I think that would fix some of the problems that they have. If they always had someone like Addison or Tom Farrell even, there are guys in the fringes who you can make that call and put in there. But like it just little fixes that. So like we're talking almost about reinventing the wheel of Joe's plans, which have delivered such success. There's two sides to every coin. The degree to which we batter teams down with the slow play has been very effective, but just to be able to have that little extra would probably be good.
Just an ability to unpick defences, because we don't seem to prioritise or be capable of it. In lieu of the multi-phase, and that's there's times for killer tries and killer plays, and we're one of the slowest teams on the uptake in terms of recognising that. Striking when the iron's hot, we go back into contact. And that even happened a few times on the Australia tour. I remember one great example where it actually ended in a Pocock steal, but it was like when you watch it with the Aussie commentary, it's going like, oh, it's surely on now, and it cuts back inside straight into Pocock, who's there, who poaches, who steals. And it's like, that was a try, but for that option. It's like, why did we do that?
Even in that game, the second test that we dominated against Australia, they actually got a play at it because they're so good at just sniffing out opportunities that they stayed in touch in a game that they were dominated in because we couldn't put the squeeze on them.
And that happened for as much as like last year was the most successful year of Irish history in Irish rugby history. Like, but for that drop goal in France, we had blown that game despite being utterly dominant, but just incapable of finding a try.
So that's like up front, there aren't too many problems really. No. They're very good breakdown, very good scrum. They need to fix the line out, obviously. One or two areas I'd like to see them offload a bit more, but it's like the long and short of it is that it's the attack. And I think you can fix the attack without doing too much damage to the defence
system as it is,
and the system, and just have a little bit more flair and dynamism. And I think that would vastly improve them for sure. But right now it's looking negative in a lot of different ways. It's looking negative in the sense that they just right now, for all of their second in the world, I think you'd have to rank on balance the All Blacks, Wales, South Africa and England as slightly ahead of where they are in terms of just figuring out those problems ahead of a World Cup.
It'd probably make them more likely to win in that World Cup as well. From those teams.
Oh yeah, I would say
just based on history as well, because we have no form in World Cups to fall back on at all. But
that said, I think we haven't actually talked about the game that much.
No, we haven't actually. I was just musing on that, as going like, we really haven't mentioned the game or Italy.
No,
and the credit has to be given to Italy as well, because they did the same to Wales. Granted, a disjointed, changed Wales from a couple of weeks ago, but they've become more combative. Tabaldi had a great game, gave them a genuine kicking option, which is useful for them. But they look pretty cogent in large periods of that.
Tabaldi makes, because they've always looked decent with ball in hand. Like there was a couple, the two big differences to what happened at the weekend that made them look so much better than they have looked is, as you say, just making first up tackles, which they made a load of and consistently, and they were in a frame of mind and they were in a focused state of like they were driven. That's what they were going to do. They were going to make those tackles. And they did consistently all through that game. And then the other thing is it's one man. It's Tito Tabaldi. Like, he was named on the opening weekend and then pulled out injured, and in came Palazzani, and it just looked like they had no plan with ball in hand. Things would go wrong and they would just keep trying silly stuff and it would just go more wrong. And like you talk about a petit general, Tabaldi just embodies it. He's got a wonderful boot on him. His read of the game was great. Brilliant hustle on Conor Murray for that strip and run up the pitch. Like, the guy was he was brilliant. He was truly brilliant for most of the game, but for one bad error where I think he cost them when they were in an offensive position. He gave a bad pass and I think that cost them. Like, for most of the game, kicks were dead on. In terms of roughing up Murray and roughing up the Irish team defensively, he did a great job. And passing game was crisp. He was all over the place good, and he made Tommy Allen's job and life a whole lot easier.
For sure. Like they look like a growing side, to be honest. They really do, and I want to give them their credit. I also do want to touch on the fact that Ireland, despite such a stop-start performance and like being harried by them, got their 4 tries in Rome, where Wales 2 weeks prior, because of their 3-point taking, didn't. Yeah. And Italy, like it's just not going too far to say that you need to respect them enough to go and play the game and take the game to them. But the way to do that isn't by kicking 3-pointers, as we've said before. Yeah. It's like it's not disrespectful to be going for that bonus point from the start, because you're recognising that maybe chances are going to be slightly fewer against this version of an Italy team than the others, but you still need to be getting your 4-try win if you have any kind of aspirations towards winning the tournament, really. Which is like a minor point it's
a good point. It's one of all the things Ireland got wrong. It's something that they got right. Yeah. That they did want to attack the corners, and they ended up getting their rewards for it. From Italy's perspective, though, like the one thing that we had noticed in advance of this tournament that had improved significantly on where they were was their basic ball and hand play, which I think very much still improved. A lot of positives in terms of that. Their catch pass has come on leaps and bounds. Tommy Allen at 10 is very exciting. He throws good passes, makes things happen. And they find tries. The one thing that had seemed to have fallen off a cliff is their intensity in defence, which they got right at the weekend. And it's one of those things that a lot of teams can get right on a weekend, and fewer teams can get right consistently. So again, remains to be seen. They're going to Twickenham in a week and a half time.
They'll taper off a little bit, and we might get to see some more of that English physical dominance.
You may be right about that, but it presents a more difficult picture, but definitely positive signs in terms of getting that right. They have a back row now that can make play after play after play.
They've actually got a good little bit of cheeky depth in the back row, because they weren't picking Negri. Parise wasn't available. I'm pretty sure the Pelledri wasn't
either. Around,
and yet the back row
is very good. Rob Stain again, he's a hero of mine. He made another couple of picked lineouts as well. He's like he actually reads the game very well. A very, very good player, and another useful cog to Italy's game. So they're all over the pitch. They're like obviously to Teresa are going like the clappers domestically as well. There's just they're not at the level of tier 1 yet. They're still to my mind very much a tier 2 team, which is why a very positive performance from them against a very negative performance from Ireland at home still amounted to a 10-point defeat. But they have a lot of like in terms of the groundwork of their game, all over the pitch you're seeing improvement, and that's massively positive. That Stockdale try off the restart, though, is an example of just taking a play off, not focusing.
Also, and just to touch back on a different point about the 3-pointers, which from a different perspective, which I'm still going to make in every podcast till the end of this tournament, is that Italy should not be going for 3-pointers in this tournament at all against any team, because they're already the inferior team by quite a distance in terms of the world rankings. Should be recognising that they're not going to win the game more than likely, be it home or away. So the only chance for them to get a point out of it is to be within 7 or score 4 tries. The likelihood is that the teams are going to score 4 tries against them, or enough points to be similar to 4 tries. So their only real hope of getting points out of this fixture, or the win, which is what the big picture is, obviously a win. They're like Conor O'Shea's under pressure because he still hasn't recorded a win. But the most likely way of getting that is to be going for tries the whole time, which is why I think those 6 points that they kicked were a waste of time and should have been attempts at tries. And even if they didn't come off, and even if they lost by 13 points or 16 points instead of the 10, they would be better off going for the tries in those attacking sets. Because what actually happened with that was that they uncorked the pressure valve. It was 7-0, they kicked for 7-3, and then immediately off the kickoff conceded 7 more points, and now they're 14-3 down. And it's like that whole time that Stockdale was jogging in for his obligatory try, they could have been setting a line out and trying to drive Ireland over. And not only that, but like taking the game to Ireland, making them be the ones making tackles, and it's just all of it makes more sense.
And in terms the risk reward benefits on those 3-pointers for lesser teams are massively stacked in favour of going for the corner. And if you do get, like, especially the place that Ireland were in mentally, that if they got the score,
Suddenly the game was in the balance enough for it to be
it ended up in the
losable.
balance enough anyway.
Yeah,
but
But like, had they had the other thing is, had they had that try, they ended on 2 tries, didn't they, with their 16 points, or was it 3? No, it couldn't be 3. It was 2. Yeah. But yeah, like, had they been even if they'd got 1 try from those 6 points that they'd got instead, if they'd got one try from it, it would have meant that in the last play they would have had something more to play. Granted, it worked out that they did, and they ended up getting a kick for it, and unfortunately missing. Yeah. But it would just put they would have been going for 2 points then in that last play, or if it had been that tries mathematically, they could have been going for the whole shebang, 5-point win. But it's just like, it makes no sense for me to see teams who are like that far below kicking 3 at all. And I just can't understand how it's not a point that's made more, because it never works out for them.
No, indeed. And but that said, still things looking improved for Italy. It was not looking like a good week for my Carlo Canna calling for us.
Well, because
Tibaldi came in and
as well.
Tibaldi came in and, you know, fixed a lot of those lack of kicking games, but not all of them. I mean, he's only one man, and he's not like
you do want your 10 to have a bit of a boot,
and Tommy doesn't. Yeah. But that said, Marisi, who was in a 12, did bag a try and looked good. But then what happened is McKinley came on, and really now 3 games in a row he's
been not up to his own standard, which is the shame, because I've seen him play really well in the last couple of years, and he's just not really doing that. And it was like, even that last kick at the end, he didn't want anything to do with that. It was Conor O'Shea barking at him, but they were going for the corner, and it was like, I was thinking that was the right option purely because of his body. Like, he went over and looked straight to Kieraldini, going like, what should we do, you know? And it's like, that's not the picture you want your 10 painting in that scenario. If it was Dan Bigger, if it was Johnny Sexton, if it was Owen Farrell, if it was probably Bowden Barrett as well, even though he's not the best place kicker, but he'd be still.
No, but I think Bodie be tapping and going.
Yeah, that's just actually true. But your Pollard, would be going, give me that ball, give me that ball, and kicking it. And it's just like, that was very much not on show, and it was only Conor O'Shea barking at him from the sideline and him meekly accepting, and then rather meekly missing.
I think Carlo Canna's a very good player, and I think they should bring him in, and if not, start him and put Tommy at 12, then put him on the bench and have him as something to bring on. I just think he
is also Italian, as opposed to a naturalised
that doesn't bother me nearly as much, but it's from a rugby perspective.
McKinley's not showing good form.
No,
as much as he is showing more of a willingness to kick, because he's a traditional kind of 10. He does have a kicking game, but it's been a bit off, to be honest, this whole tournament. And even when he came on in the first game, he kicked one that ended
up on one
that ended up being a try. And it was like, he's not been covering himself in glories, unfortunately. But because I do wish him well.
All due respect to Peter O'Mahony, though, before we wrap up this game, Tito Tibaldi deserved man of the match. He was a game breaker. He was brilliant, and like he justified a lot of things that had seemed irrational. And it was just, his absence ahead of that Scotland game. Like that's a massive blow that they've been missing the last 2 games, and great to see him back. Positivity from Italy for sure.
And some head scratching from Ireland still ongoing.
Yes, well, we
covered that in all too much depth. So
covered it in broad speak in a lot of depth, and probably didn't go into enough detail on the specifics of the game. Not that it matters all that much. I mean, I think the broad speak is probably more important, genuinely.
Well, it's all with a mind toward the World Cup, particularly the week of the Italy game. But to be honest, a win's a win, and fair play to get in the 5, and it ended up being quite important because now we're back in the mix ish.
No. Not to my mind.
Not really.
It would have been if they had gone and put 60 or something on Italy. They would have been in a position where
points difference.
They could have done a job on France and then done a job on Wales, and then even if England had maxed out against Italy,
we're just hoping for Scotland, a resurgent Scotland, to win in Twickenham, which is so far fetched. It sounds laughable even now. I don't see it. I don't see it. But like third place is probably about an accurate reflection of where Ireland are coming up in this tournament so far on their showings.
We talked a bit about how scary it is that they look in their 07 funk. It's a relief to some extent from an Ireland fan's perspective, and obviously the Ireland talk is always coloured with that a little bit, that we're just massive Ireland fans, so obviously there's always that more personal note to it. But it's a relief in the sense that it's happening now and not at the World Cup.
Yeah.
Because, geez, if they had been going like the Clappers all the way into the World Cup and then shown up and played like they've played so far in this tournament, it would have been heartbreak that I don't know that I could take.
Very depressing watch. Yeah. So hopefully things will get remedied. Yeah. But I guess we'll move on. Wrap up that game.
We'll move on. Those
that game and the Six Nations.
And the Six Nations, and listen, it's been a great tournament so far, and not yet decided, as Eddie Jones is keen to point out.
Yes,
there's still lots of games of rugby to come.
It's true.
But poised ahead of the last 2 weeks, going into Paddy's Day. Just wanted to touch briefly on the upcoming weekend of the Rugby Europe Championship, which is still ongoing, but outside of the Georgia-Russia game, we're petering out of big games.
Yeah. Georgia are in Belgium this week, which will just be a shellacking for Belgium.
Yes, the poor Belgians will struggle. I suspect the poor Germans will struggle against Russia as well.
Likely to.
The big game of the weekend is Spain against Romania, a rematch of last year's game that Spain won. Mm-hmm. That's just going to be a curious watch. Two teams who are frustrated and out of the World Cup. Doesn't have World Cup connotations, but they're two sides go, pretty good teams. Mm-hmm. And I'd say there'd be a bit of niggle in that.
For sure. Worth a watch. Of all the games of that tournament, it's that one this weekend. There's normally one a weekend. That's a good little match.
Four good teams. Yeah. Means there's always
some good matchup. Going.
Exactly. Yeah. And those two teams, they're definitely competent. And I actually think for Romania, they could, if they lose again to Spain, it's going to be a bit of a hammer blow to the confidence. They came out firing against Georgia, but they couldn't. They played a very good game, but Georgia was too good. Yeah. And then they stuttered a bit the previous week, I think, against Germany. Mm-hmm. And now this is a proper test for them. And I think it's important for them. Just they've been going off a cliff. I think there was something I saw on Twitter which was it was about 50-year anniversary of a game that Romania played in rugby union against France.
Right.
That had I think an attendance of about 70,000 in Romania in Bucharest. Am I right about that? Is that yes. Okay. And then it was juxtaposed with the game that they had, I think, against Germany, or one of the games that they'd had at the same time, with a crowd of about 2,000 or 3,000. Right. And just an indication that the game has not gone the way that one would hope over there.
Kind of reverse engineering it backwards. Not good.
And a Romanian renaissance is not necessarily seemingly on the horizon, but to win against Spain would be good for them. That said, the Spanish are class and a lot of fun and on the up, and certainly wouldn't begrudge them another win. And having been robbed of their World Cup spot, it would be some feel good.
They're a factor in sevens and in women's rugby as well. There just seems to be a constant growth going on in Spain, so it's on the rise. They're very unfortunate to be not in the World Cup at the expense of Russia, but sure, hey ho, it's all done now, water under the bridge, and all they can do now is try and beat Romania in Madrid for the home fans.
Absolutely.
And I suppose we'll just do a bit of cleaning house then, rather than do Pro 14 stuff.
Sure thing.
Because the results kind of went by rote for the most part in the Pro 14 this week just gone. We had a kind of beleaguered Cheetahs who were already out losing to the Scarlets.
They weren't already out. They had won that game, that was a game. I know they wanted to beat Connacht, but if they had beaten Scarlets, they would have had, because they have 15 free points at the end of the season. They have an easy game at home against, I think, one of the Welsh. It might be home against Dragons, and then back-to-back games against the Kings.
That's good.
Which would prop them up into whatever that conference system definitely favours them, because they get to play the Kings so damn often.
Yes.
But they would have had a chance to get into it. But now I think after this loss and the defeat to Connacht, they're too far back.
Tamely making their exit. Yeah.
So that's value in the sense that I think if you're keeping tabs in the Pro 14, you can probably draw a line through the Cheetahs season.
And Scarlets getting out of their funk and recording a win is good.
Yeah,
because geez, they've been coming up with some absolute corkers of losses of late. So yes, and all season in fact it hasn't really been their year, but they're still in the mix, in the hunt anyway for a playoff spot and some silverware out of the tournament, or out of the year is obviously what they're hoping for. In other news, as far as that, 1917 loss at home for Edinburgh,
where they led
Cardiff.
17-0. It was going perfectly Richard Cockrell, and then all of a sudden some Cardiff happened.
Cranky Cockrell was probably on show. That's not good.
And listen, that becomes like that game has changed the complexion of the league, in the sense that now
Edinburgh have fallen out.
Edinburgh have fallen out behind Ulster and Treviso. Cardiff have jumped in the other conference, and Edinburgh, actually have a very tough fixture list. They have a game this weekend away in Treviso. A massive game for them. If they lose that, their next game is against us, Leinster, in I think it's in Murrayfield. That's a tough fixture for any team in this league. And I think they have another couple of tricky ones coming up as well. I don't think they have an easy game left in their run-in. So it could be all coming up a cropper, coming up terrible for them, because as is so often the case, the Six Nations period
can be the undoing of many a Pro 14 team. Yeah, it's true. We've seen a bit of Scarlet's frailty in the absence of some of their Welsh men. Seeing it in Edinburgh as well. It's a tough ask of Edinburgh as well, being such a relatively small club, but also they've had a lot with the injury crisis now. They've had to be pulling a lot more weight than they have done in years gone by, as far as the national side is concerned.
Not to mention like Hamish Watson just pure gone as well, but and Mark Bennett and co as well. That said, still Mata and Dupree and Van der Merwe on the wing.
True.
Enough there.
And a 17-point head start. So it shouldn't have been. I don't know. I didn't actually see that game. I only saw highlights of it, but it's disappointing. Disappointing from an Edinburgh perspective, because it does.
Happy from a Cardiff one.
Really good from a Cardiff one.
They've been just losing games for all of their industry. They've been losing games, so it's nice to see them get a W.
Yeah. And away from home, no less.
Away from home,
in Murrayfield, no less, where few teams go to win. Yeah. And yet it's happening a bit more often this year.
It is.
Oh.
Yeah. Ooh. Negative signs for the Scots.
In other news, to throw water on your Carlo Canuck call, Zebra lost 54-7 in Ulster.
I think most rugby teams, including the All Blacks, would lose by heavy margins to Ulster in the Kingspan Stadium. They are one of the great teams of our generation. So, I mean, take it easy on Carlo Canuck. They got 7 points out of it.
Yeah.
That's a decent showing in the fortress that is the Kingspan Stadium. So, chill out. There
were a few nice tries in there from Ulster, though. Getting I think some lovely hands, some good stuff.
They do score good tries. They're actually a very good place this year.
They're buzzing. They've seemed to have clicked in to some kind of gear, and they're definitely going to be competing for whatever conference they're in. Definitely going to be renewing their European berth next year, but also they're still in Europe this year. So it's all very good, and a few young players played as well. They're looking very positive, purring along. Treviso, another one, similarly having an excellent year, an unprecedented excellent year.
I tell you what,
57-7 against Dragons.
It speaks volumes to, because they've obviously missing a lot of players. Just the system that they've put in place there. In Benetton, they've obviously got like a structure and a body that's stable and is churning out some talent, and you can give the youths a go and they can stick to the same systems and get the same profit. That's the Leinster model. That's happy days if it works out. That said, Dragons are
very poor.
That's crazy. That's a crazy result for any team against a depleted Treviso.
What's going on? It's not like there are too many Dragons in the Welsh jersey. I know Corey Hill is
Ross Moriarty.
Is that it?
Probably.
Maybe
they're Dragons.
Yeah, it's just
Richard Hibbert. I don't think is in the squad.
No, he's not. He's long since fallen out of favour. But to be only registering 7 points over in Treviso is very poor. But then also to be shipping 57 points against anyone is not ideal.
No,
let alone over in Italy. So concerning signs for Dragons, but they've probably already written off this season, having sacked their coach pre-Christmas.
I know, but how long can it go on? Where's the positivity going to come from?
I don't know. And similarly, Kings.
Another
59-19. They scored 3 tries. They only went for tries,
as such,
they had something to play for in the last play. They are lending credence to my argument because they're a bit mental and they don't kick 3 anyway. But they're like, they know how to attack.
They're actually for a team that never wins and is largely fairly useless. They're quite fun to watch.
No, they make pretty games. They mean you can score a load of obscenely unfeasible tries, as we often suspected when watching them play in Super Rugby as well. When you're looking at some of the pictures of some of the tries that were scored even by teams and players that are international, you're going like, but that doesn't happen from a European perspective as well. Like, that doesn't happen. But then sure enough they join the league and it does against these lads. Mad pictures and mad tries. Like Noel Reid's first try, there was no reason for him to get through that at all. Like there was no defender there, and he just cut inside at a slight angle.
Exactly,
it's just like
changed his direction slightly, and the whole team fell over.
That shouldn't happen in any game of rugby, but it was a try.
That's it. They're a little bit woe-begotten and out of their depth, and something. It would be a game changer to see some proper South African teams get a go up here. But as is. It's not on the cards. It's not really what we're going for. The last game of that weekend was Connacht getting shellacked by some positive Glaswegian play.
Outmatched across the board. We did watch most of that game anyway, and it was just Connacht were never in it to win it, and deservingly getting hammered. Glasgow
when they hit their straps are impressive, fine outfit, and they still have a good tradition there of throwing the ball about.
And they have a pitch that facilitates it no matter the weather. Although the weather was alright.
When they get a head of steam up and they get some hustle about them, they do just keep going off restarts. And if you're, off your game against them,
or
you're feeling
if you're resigned,
they will just keep going. And there was a touch of that against Connacht at the weekend. It's a setback for Connacht after last week, but they've got big matches to come.
They do, and European matches to come as well. Sure, they
I think whatever way they go about it, it's time that team qualified for the Heineken Cup properly by themselves. No nonsense.
Try to make a go of it in that comp, but it had probably have to come from winning the other one.
They're still teetering on the edge in the Pro 14. They were in the playoffs last week. Cardiff jumped ahead of them. They're in that malaise. I think you're talking about Munster, Glasgow, and someone else from that conference, which is one of Cardiff, Connacht, Ospreys. Or maybe the Cheetahs, but they're gone now, I'd say. So it's one of those three, and that's that's the game that they're in, and losses like that don't help get it done.
No, that's true. And then that it wasn't actually the last game. The
last game
was the Ospreys losing at home to Munster 1913. Okay. It was a bit of a dull game. Munster not as clinical as they ought to have been, but were superior.
That sounds
to Ospreys.
just about right.
Yeah.
That's the spread.
that is about the spread. Pro 14 action kind of wrapped up.
Well, the games this week, just if there's see if there's anything interesting going on.
Oh yes, you were citing Treviso Edinburgh.
Yeah, which I mentioned already.
Huge game this weekend. 4:00 on Saturday. In Treviso.
3:00. 3:00 Greenwich Mean Time.
British time. 4:00 in kickoff in Rome.
Yes.
Or in Treviso, not rather Benham.
It would be 4:00 in Rome as well.
Yes, it would as well. But yes, that's a very consequential game for the reasons we pretty much just outlined. Both those teams still battling out for playoff places, and
Treviso looking more and more
solid in there. Edinburgh are the ones who really need to go over there and get a win, and that's
desperately
it doesn't look likely off the back of a home loss to Cardiff.
And then Connacht Ospreys, I would cite, is a massive game in Conference A. That's
the Ospreys are out of contention, I read.
Are they?
Are they?
No. You're talking about Dan Bigger's men. No, they're not. They're well in the hunt. They're well in the hunt. They're 3 points off.
3 points behind
Cardiff and Connacht, who are both on the same amount of points. So that is a huge game.
They just lost so many games. I can't believe that. But fair enough.
Don't be disrespecting Dan Bigger's men like that.
Dan Bigger's in Wales doing class things. So the Ospreys are struggling in his absence. But that's obviously a consequential game for both. They both realistically, it's getting to that point in the season where, despite the fact that it's in the Six Nations window, they just need to win those games. Because not all teams have the luxury Leinster have been afforded of a ludicrous cushion that they can now chill back and not bother winning any games, but also seemingly have an easy run of it now. Which is crazy.
They're going to be setting records with the level of
points accrued
and just the points difference between them and the rest of the conference.
It's mental, but it does create rather a malaise below them, which is rather fascinating as far
and
as
I
the
tell you what,
permutations.
like Edinburgh are fourth right now. If they behind Treviso and Ulster, if they lose this week to Treviso will obviously kick on that bit more. And Ulster are playing the Dragons, so Ulster will kick on, and then all of a sudden Edinburgh will be really up against it, chasing, and obviously having one eye on the European game against Munster to come. Yeah. So it's definitely turbulent waters now for Edinburgh.
Bum time,
and Scotland alike. It's been not the greatest month for Scottish rugby after a great January where they came out and qualified 2 teams for the knockout stages, crashing back to earth this month in a big way.
An unfortunate turn of events, but it has been the way, and it's just tough to say. But Edinburgh have a chance going to Treviso. That's going to be some game. I do want to make sure I watch that.
Yeah.
Other than that, a few kind of by rote. Zebra playing Glasgow.
There's a few other games, but we don't need to concern ourselves massively with any of them.
No, not particularly. So just another one to mention was in the Premiership, the British Gallagher Premiership.
Oh yeah.
Yes. There were a few kind of massive upset kind of wins. The main one being Gloucester. Gloucester now 2 weeks running beating Exeter and then Sarries, and they beat Sarries 30 points to 24 in Kingsholm.
Yeah, they're a very good team.
Yeah,
they
are the beneficiaries of a lot of their guys getting near snubbed for the England duty because they're playing well enough. But the likes of Ben Morgan grabbing a try against Sarries, it's like a Farrell-less and a Toji-less and a Vunapola-less Sarries, which is quite a changed outfit. Yeah, but Gloucester are definitely more their team is basically unaffected. Still have the likes of Thorley and Sips.
Again, those three, the axis of Thorley, Cipriani, and Ben Morgan. Those 3 guys could do a job in an England outfit, and Thorley is someone that really excites me. He reminds me of Larmour. He's got super gas. He actually got what Larmour doesn't have. He doesn't quite have Larmour's feet, but he does have more physicality through the contact. Super quick, good eye for the try, good eye for a pass and a kick as well. He's no slouch under a high ball either. He's got a lot of fundamentals to him. He's the kind of explosive young talent that you can actually have a bit of confidence about throwing into your national setup. But they haven't gone that way. They do have a very competitive winger selection area. But all 3 of those guys are probably test level, and they're talismanic in that side.
Well, I would certainly say Ben Morgan rather than Nathan Hughes is a much better option in the absence of your obvious Billy Vunipola, or just even a bench option. But the beneficiaries are Gloucester, and that they're recording great wins in the absence of all that. But the other win that was rather surprising was Worcester, bottom of the table Worcester, getting a win against Leicester. Jordan Murphy's beleaguered Leicester side. Struggling and really are hugging the bottom of the table now as well. They're if you just switch over to the table there, I'm pretty sure they're either third from bottom or second from bottom.
Newcastle are bottom
they're
of the
actually
table.
fourth from bottom.
I thought bottom of the table Worcester. They were in the relegation battle, but Newcastle are bottom of the table. Worcester have jumped actually ahead of Bristol there with that win.
Yeah, Bristol.
And then Leicester are just above them.
Just above them, but within 4 points. It's that's a very strange alien place for the Leicester Tigers of the last
becoming
decade.
less so with every passing week.
Yeah, Leicester Cubs. Oh.
Yeah.
No, it's disappointing for them, obviously, but positive signs from Worcester. Newcastle, what a season!
Yeah,
they had some fun. They beat Toulon, and then it's all kind of come unraveled. But
Toby's boys not making it happen.
No, they looking like they're going to be going down.
So most people, I think, Newcastle is a relatively established. For the ring fencing argument that they want to cynically do, I think the plan was for Worcester to go down and London Irish to come up, and then for you to ring fence.
Yeah,
but guess not.
I love some of the small justices that have been dealt out through that relegation thing over the years are quite interesting. It's always an interesting part of that little tournament as well. Like when Bristol in years gone by signed a load of contracts prematurely on the basis that they were going to get through, and then it turned out they lost their head-to-head thing with London Welsh hilariously. Like I just
Welsh
found
couldn't field a team.
And then they did get into the Premiership, and it was a bit of a joke because they were just so far from the level that it was a good argument for ring fencing, but it was just hilarious the manner in which Bristol got some just desserts dealt to them. Absolutely. Although I wish them more well now because it's Pat Lam, and obviously it's Ian Madigan over there, and a few
a few others.
John Afoa I think is playing for them now as well.
That's right. Marahan, I think Luke Marahan. Yeah, they've a few decent players, but mind you, languishing themselves.
Yeah, 26 points.
A couple of wins could change that, but for the time being,
they need to get them. They lost at the weekend as well at home, I believe. If you just
Quins, was it?
Might have been Quins. Who was it?
I don't know.
Oh, we'll check now. Results.
It was to Quins. It was away.
Oh, it was away. Right. Okay.
26. A lot of those their games take that kind of fun nature.
Like the first season of Pat Lam's Connacht, where they lost by just more than 7 points and not registering any league points in the doing so, but actually being a big part of the game. But like that was kind of the only one I wanted to mention really was Gloucester from all that, because that was the big story. Because Gloucester,
exactly. And things happened and teams played in the Topple tours, I'm sure. Actually, Clermont lost.
Clermont did lose, and Toulouse won against Montpellier.
Yeah, that's right. So that gap has opened up at the top of the table.
And Racing lost as well, which kind of they were in third as well. So I think Toulouse are looking very comfortable currently. At the top of
that's right. Yeah. That said, just before we move on to the Super Rugby, I just wanted to touch on a game that I watched at the weekend, which we've given the Rugby Europe its due diligence. But the Americas Rugby Championship, which is a very good tournament itself, haven't probably been giving it its due on this show. It's, you know what it is? It's just the Argentina 15 part of it that takes me out of it, because they win every game, and I don't. Yeah, it seems a bit silly that they're in there at all.
Right, but they're in American.
Yeah, I know. We're European, and we don't have to hammer all those teams for no good reason.
Yeah.
But
but
that said, the tournament does produce some class games, and Uruguay is a team that's been on the up for the last number of years. Obviously, Canada, conversely, on the way down. And America, the US, very much the strongest non-Argentinian side in the comp.
Yes.
And they had a cracking game in Texas against Brazil, who are the other up-and-comer.
Brazil of the very good scrum.
Very tight, compact, low to the floor scrum that likes to push up on teams and almost lift the opposition front row in a very comical way and drive through them.
Excellent.
But the only note from the game, obviously America had basically got it won early doors, but Brazil just kept chipping away at the lead and kept hustling. But there's for all of their talk about them being just about a scrum, their skill set is very good. Their catch pass is good, eye for the line and an eye for a chance is good.
Yeah.
Didn't look to be physically they weren't as they were dominated in their early exchanges by America.
A big strong American team.
Yeah, they certainly looked up to the challenge. Then in the rest of the game, ended up only losing it by 5, having been 19 points down away in Texas. And they silenced that crowd. Got a try on 71 minutes to make it a 1-score game and silenced that crowd.
It's impressive.
So there's not only is it a positive story, they actually, just looking at them play, they look like they're probably here to stay. They've got a lot of good skills. They've got a lot going on for them.
Well, that's good news.
It's all positive out of Brazil right now. And that was a banging game.
And they're in it right to the end. Shame about that last pass though. Straight into touch. Yeah. Oh, it's always not a pretty picture. No. It feels like a chance is on, and then deflating crowd moments
happens.
But it was actually rather inflating in that instance, because the Texas crowd were kind of starting to believe then, or not that they started to believe, but there were definitely nervy moments before that ball went out, and then it was like
100%.
We are. And then they overthrew the line subsequently and gave them another go at it, but it was only a great steal. Good stuff though. I like games ending that way, a little bit back and forth, and then a play having to be made, which was the steal. So no, definitely a good game to mention. And good to see Brazil, a country you would never associate with rugby at all. And good to see them. Things like a positive scrum, that's mental. Because my normal is if you were to mention Brazil to me without me having seen any of them playing, I would be picturing a load of footballers who couldn't quite make it as a footballer, so now they're playing rugby.
Just little baller guys. Yeah.
Which is what we did see once when we watched the Colombian Sevens, I think.
You know what else they know in Brazil is fucking jiu-jitsu.
Exactly right. That's true.
Yeah, that's another whole...
And that's... Sure. I'm pretty sure I see a bit of that kind of wrestling background in what Georgia do in the tackle area.
Yeah.
I think there's something to be said for it.
Let's have the jiu-jitsu versus old school wrestling scrum, the Georgians against the Brazilians. It's actually, when you look at them, it's actually not that sort of jiu-jitsu-y. It's just low, it's compact, it's an 8-man shove, and it's very low to the floor, so its center of gravity is just super low, and then they're just pushing up on the opposition. It's very decent technical scrummaging, but there's not a lot of fiddly sticks from the props at all.
Right,
they just get set and they push.
Going and driving. Yeah. That's probably good. Welcome to most referees.
Yeah.
You feel like
pure
probably be shocked against maybe even the Georgians, but probably some tier 1 packs, should they ever be afforded the opportunity to play against them.
Before you even get a chance to get it going, all of a sudden Cian Healy is doing things to your arm that you didn't know could be done.
Yeah.
Then it's a whole other picture.
So, but that being said, an 8-man shove from a Brazilian team pushing the US back, it's a satisfying picture. It's a satisfying picture. What can we say?
The US have a game, I think this weekend against Uruguay, who are in the World Cup, another ballerific team coming from South America, and that's another exciting one that'll be worth a watch.
Yeah.
Then we just want to talk about Super Rugby.
Dip it into Super Rugby. Do a brief enough preview on it, because there were some class games in Super Rugby at the weekend just gone.
There were.
Special shout out to the Reds, who put on a bit of a show and were very, very combative in against the Highlanders, wasn't it?
The Highlanders, that's right.
And just a really, really good game back and forth that I didn't expect from them. We hadn't seen them all year. Based on last year's show where they were getting rid of Quaid and getting rid of all the ballers from the team and just playing a very boring non-Queensland Red style. This wasn't the traditional Queensland, the loosey-goosey kind of thing, which I'm sure was what Thorne wants to stamped out, is just that looseness, which he's probably right in, because this was a team that looked very functional in many ways, but their scrum half, whose name escapes me right now, very quick, very technical dude, managed a great offload off the deck for the Rada try. But both their set of halfbacks look a decent head on their shoulders, not averse to kicking when it's on, but also their shape is good enough that they can get wide when they need to. They seem to be looking to try and suss out where the space is and find it either through kick or pass. And they stayed in it in New Zealand, which is so unprecedented for any iteration of the Reds. They should just be getting hammered in that game. They weren't at all hammered in that game. They were very competitive in it and somewhat physically lacking sometimes, but not throughout the whole 80 minutes, and they just kept touch. And the other thing that I do have to mention is just the Highlanders were stuttering a bit to allow that to happen. Things like their line out, they lost several of their own throws badly through just timing issues and rustiness. And I would say the same thing about certain performers in the backline, particularly Ben Smith, which is such a rare thing, because he did grab a try and all, but he actually had a few touches that were not good, which is so rare that it's worthy of a mention, because I just cannot recall a game in which I've seen Ben Smith do anything wrong at all. Occasionally the team does something wrong because Ben Smith hasn't seen the ball in 20 minutes. Sometimes the All Blacks get that wrong. But so rare is it that I see him not make the right play. And there were instances, there was one where he went to try and catch a ball and keep it in play, but his foot was on the line. It's that's very un-Ben Smith. A few loose passes to deck as well. And it's just it was a stuttery thing. You can still put it down to only week 2.
That's
early
it.
days,
maybe you gotta always contextualize it in that way.
It's true.
It's still honest over there.
But I'll be on the lookout of that, because if that starts to happen for the rest, I'll be worried about the All Blacks' chances in the World Cup.
Yeah,
very much so. Because if Ben Smith's not firing for them,
Kiwi teams all over stuttering a wee bit. So for non-Crusaders Kiwi teams, that is.
Yeah.
But nobody else can stake a claim to having a very particularly solid
the most
start.
shocking one was definitely what the Brumbies did to the Chiefs. Because as much as we've been looking at the Chiefs and thinking, even last year, suspecting that they're going to be on a decline a bit because of just the amount of their team, the whole team that they built being picked apart and all the great players from it pulled apart from Mackenzie, who's now at 10 for them instead of 15.
Which is wrong.
And Scotty Stevenson instead at 15, isn't he?
You've got is Stephen Donald back there? He is
back there for the Chiefs.
But so you've got Donald in there, but I think you've got Gatland and Marty Banks and I think you've another.
No, Marty Banks is at the Highlanders.
Yeah, no, I was going to say at the Highlanders, you've Gatland, you've Marty Banks, and who was starting at them? Ioane was starting at 10.
Yes, yeah.
So it's 3 perfectly viable 10s there, and then you have DMAC playing out of position at 10 for the Chiefs. Yeah. From a New Zealand Rugby Union perspective, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
No, it doesn't. Do you want him as 10 cover in the World Cup? Because no,
like, you don't,
because
well, they've been starting him at 15, and now he doesn't even get to play there. So that, none of that seems to make much sense. And for the Chiefs, it definitely doesn't make sense because the boy's not a 10.
Indeed, but it just means they're somewhat toothless in attack as they were in this game, but also shipping so many points against the Brumbies of all teams. What's going on in the world? Chiefs getting hammered.
Listen, man, Canberra is a difficult place to go. Brumbies are one of the best teams probably in world rugby, I would say. I would say that most teams would be quaking in their boots, trembling at the sight of those sort of hoopy blue and white with a bit of yellow jerseys.
No, I'm not having that. 54-17 though, it's such an unprecedented result. Very disappointing from a Chiefs perspective. Very heartening, massive for Australian rugby. This is really good news, and that coupled
not something we would have seen coming.
No, this is something utterly but it's like it's just great to see some competence from them finally, because that conference has just been an absolute hodgepodge of terrible rugby for the last few years, and it's just like unpleasant to look at some of the horrendousness of the plays coming out of them for the last few years. So this is progress. This is much better for the tournament as a whole, and it's better for Australia's World Cup prospects, obviously.
It feels like something that the union needs to take seriously, and probably is taken seriously. I mean, there's been a lot spoken of in the off season in Australian rugby. There's a lot of news flying out regarding Cheika and Scott Johnson and everything else. Yeah, but I'd say there's it's that on steroids behind the scenes, and I definitely think that, and I hope that they've identified the performances of the Super Rugby franchises as vitally important to what Australian rugby do and their prospects going forward, and that's so investing time and energy in them is massive, and getting
and not just the Waratahs.
No, indeed.
As was illustrated very well by the Sunwolves, who managed to not win because let's be honest, it was the Sunwolves, but 31-30.
Yeah,
a baller of a game, an entertaining game against the Waratahs.
Cracking coach in Tony Brown. The Singapore thing is the thing that just really takes me out of it, because they don't get fans showing up there, and then in the stadium in Japan there was loads of fans, good crowd.
They were even able to do a zoom in on a fan who was wearing a Sunwolves jersey. Actually, a few of them. Imagine that.
No, listen, it was all good. They had a couple of little class set piece plays, and Tony Brown just amuses me with his play calling, because one of those plays was the exact same play that Japan scored against South Africa in 2015.
It's a double screen to an inside ball to a winger,
and it was just that was one of the plays that led to their try.
It was actually a South African winger who scored it as well.
There you go.
That is still a problem with some ones. They need to get more Japanese representation in terms of just the players there, the person.
I don't quite know how the franchise works in the sense that are they getting much money from their Singapore benefactors?
Maybe so.
But it doesn't seem to make much sense that they're semi-based there.
Yeah, semi-based anywhere doesn't seem to make full sense.
Let alone half a continent away.
Yes,
you know, be like having this sort of half Ireland, half Greek team that play half their matches in each. Yeah, you know, they got nothing to do with one another.
A bit mad. In other games, I suppose there was the Crusaders racking up their obligatory win over the Hurricanes.
Got it done.
36-22. Hurricanes kind of came on strong towards the end. TJ coming on seemed to change things a little bit for them as well. Obviously there was no Bowden there either, so it's kind of a start of season Hurricanes outfit. Crusaders looking very good. Absolute shout out to the Techers of who's the right wing. You need to find it.
Matty Valley.
Kind of for Richie Mo'unga's first try, their second, but just an absolute play of plays. Lovely to see some touchline awareness. It's normally in the finishing of the tries, but I just love the way wingers who are proper wingers just know where their feet are in relation to the touchline and how to keep in the field of play long enough to either get the ball down or get a magical offload, as was the case here. But yeah, his foot just kind of hovers over the thing. He keeps it off, suspended in the air, and just gets the ball away. And you love to see that. It's like complete tactful. It is Matteelli, yeah. And apologies for forgetting that name, but yes, beautiful play. The Crusaders look a well-oiled machine, as always.
Yeah,
very fearful of any opponent facing them, to be honest, because they just look a little bit better than most of the teams.
Yeah, just more better coached with better personnel and more physical than just about anybody. That said, like, the travel takes its toll on any team in this competition, and to have what appear to be some competent Australian teams is a potential game changer for some of those Kiwi teams. The idea that you can't just lethargically travel across to Australia and win games playing at half pace,
dole out a whooping,
is definitely a positive sign. And that's something that the Chiefs have.
Hopefully that persists all season now, because as in terms of the combativeness of the Australian.
All of a sudden you start shouting out like Jordan Pataya for the Wallaby selection. Maybe Carmichael Unkite's bit of form back. All of a sudden the Wallabies start to actually look like they have a bit of depth, dare you say it.
Yeah, as opposed to just being
like it's so crucial for them to get it's so crucial for them to get going. And looking positive. To pivot across to those SAFA teams, the Sharks had a very good win over the Blues.
Yes.
The Blues, whose hype, back-to-back losses now, the hype
not a great start to the season.
Rather derailed rather quickly.
And Nonu on water bottle duty as it's all going down.
Yeah, don't like that.
But I suppose they're limiting game time for older statesmen, I guess, maybe.
No, well, the All Blacks want any All Black prospects limited of time regardless. So there's a bit of that going on, but certainly for a team that has ingrained in them a losing mentality, to have a bit of positivity going into a season and an open loss, it's going to be tough for them to recover, especially in that conference.
It's true.
That said, it was actually a tough outing against a good Sharks team with a lot of good players. Nathaniel Wan coming in there back in and looking like it. I think the previous game that I'd seen him in was I saw him last week obviously for the Sharks, but prior to that I think the last game you would have seen him play was the All Blacks, beating the All Blacks in Wellington, where he defended brilliantly, and you just saw you're
instantly back again.
It's like
a
quicker Robbie
bonus point try came off an absolute perfect read.
It's like a quicker Robbie Henshaw. Like, he's very good in the contact. He strips the ball brilliantly. Like in terms of defensive centre, I mean, Jesse Creel, watch out! This guy's coming for your jersey, big time. He's a very
serious
good player.
Prospect for sure. So it was an impressive win, to be honest. They kind of cruised past them and kept it an arm's length.
I'm excited to look at them. They got beat the Sunwolves in Singapore by a cricket score last week, and nobody quite knew what to make of that. But then the Sunwolves put up a very creditable showing against the Waratahs, and the Sharks go and do the Blues, who damn near beat the Crusaders. And all of a sudden that sort of weird maths works out quite well for the Sharks.
Yes, but that math is bullshit though, because that doesn't work out, because every game is completely different.
That's true,
and
but
teams match up differently against one another. But it's an interesting point, and they definitely personnel wise look interesting. It would be good to see them get that run of form and run of games going, such as they're causing those questions for the Springboks that they always have as well, just in terms of who goes where, because it's only
terrible to see, by the way, Justin Cosi, who's been riddled with injuries in his career, go down again, and even a semi-serious one. But conversely, great to see Kerwin Bosch get on and get a bit of meat for it.
We're big Kerwin Bosch fans here on this podcast. Like the way he plays game from 10 or 15, to be honest. 100%. I think he does a good job. And then in other Springbok news or SAFA news, the Bulls continued their
perplexing
never, they cannot win in Buenos Aires seemingly, and they sure enough lost 27-12 to the Jaguares.
Well, listen, after last week's season opener against the Stormers, that's a burst balloon of a performance.
What is going on?
That said, I didn't actually see the game, and the Jaguares are full of class Argentinians, and I'm not going to speak ill of them, because I think that's there's every chance that's a class Argentinian performance. I just don't know. I didn't actually get a chance to see it, but you will learn more as the season goes on. Obviously, things are going to bounce around,
fluctuate a little bit more. But the other thing, like the Stormers, having done that last weekend, they went and beat the Lions.
Well, beat the Lions at home. That's that's not an undoable thing. They're still a very good team on paper, the Stormers. Forget you got your Khaleesi's and your Peter Steffs. You're never going to be too far off of the back row that looks like that.
No, certainly not off in the physicality, which is where a lot of these tight games can come down to. So indeed. No, it's true. that game was rather entertaining though. The Lions. I don't know why I enjoy seeing the Lions lose as much as I do, but maybe it's because I just don't really like the Lions that much. But
it's got to do with the fairness.
Definitely got to do with the inequity of the system over the last little while, whereby they have been for some reason not travelling to New Zealand at all in a season and cruising to the final. And despite my suspicion, looking at them, even in those wins, looking at them thinking, but they're not as good as the Canes or any of that, and it's just like
you marry that with the fact that their home advantage
involves altitude. Ellis Park is like how far? I'm not sure how high above sea level, but it is. Yes, very, and means everything's different then, and they're familiar with it, and they're having to play. Even in finals mode, they're playing all their games there, so they're not getting a fair game against the likes of the Hurricanes or whatever, and it's just like there's definitely begrudgery there. There's also just the fact that while they were doing that, they were filtering into the Springbok team and led to what, to my mind, is like the worst iteration of the Springboks ever in that lion-studded Springbok affair with Alistair Coetzee. So you had your Yankees and your Coetzee and your
Cronje at scrum half, Yankees at 10, and then the centres would be Mapu and who was in there with him? I think it might have been Delindy and Mapu. No, it wasn't even. No. I can't remember who was at 12. I don't think Jesse Creel was on it.
Right.
Lionel Mapu was at 13. And then the back three was Skassan and
Raymond Rule, or some rotation of wingers who cannot make a defensive play at all.
And then you look at South Africa and you just look at all the wingers. In Nkosi and Dianti and Snyman and Colby, and there's others as well. For the Sharks, your man Mapu, Mapimpi is an absolute baller of a thing, and he only got a couple of caps before he got injured last year for the South Africans. But he's a quality winger. I mean,
just to have absentee jerseys in that while that was going on was just baffling to my mind. So it's kind of, for all of those reasons, I enjoy watching the Lions lose. And I'm sorry about that to any Lions fans.
That's a bitter man right there, folks.
It's only slightly. But that's what disappointed me about the Jaguars game in week 1. I wanted the Jaguars to beat them.
They got it done against the Bulls.
They did.
The Bulls are another team that are perennial letdowners.
For such a good team on paper again, and it's just like, what does be happening over there? I don't know. The differences in performance though are staggering, because you can watch them be
week to week,
like a completely different team despite being the same team. So I don't know. They're a very strange entity.
Super Rugby can be in terms of, it's actually 2 or 3 notches, especially outside of New Zealand. You get the same players playing 2 or 3 notches down in intensity. That's a very different picture.
It's true.
I'm curious to see how the South African and Australian derbies match up with the Aussie Conference looking so positive. Because there's a potential for them to catch some Springbok-ridden teams cold. Especially over there. It's shaping up. It's shaping up to be the best season of Super Rugby in terms of general competitiveness and fun matches, probably in a number of years.
For sure. Since they've restructured it, really.
And I think you get an illustration of that in the games this week. I mean, there's all kinds of permutations. I mean, the opening game is Hurricanes against Brumbies. The Hurricanes obviously off that obligatory defeat to the Satyrs, then a bit of a lucky win against the Taz, so they're yet to find their stride, but they're full of All Blacks and they're a very good team, and they're coming up against a Brumbies team coming off a humdinger of a result. Very interesting matchup. It's hard to call what's going to happen. Melbourne Rebels, rather than being a depressing entity who we couldn't be bothered looking at, are now
the Quaid and Genya comeback tour.
Indeed. Everyone's going to want to watch the Rebels this year, because that's a very fun picture, and they're off playing the Highlanders. Also very fun.
Had a stuttery home performance, and will be looking to remedy some of their issues, and the Rebels will be looking to continue some good form and try and nick a win against the New Zealand side, which would be very unprecedented in Rebels club history. That's an interesting picture. That's the Friday games.
And last year you would have looked at those games and gone, right, 40-point win for the Hurricanes, 40-point win for the Highlanders.
No, it's true. It's true. But it's just that's a fundamentally change, even if it ends up being a 40-point win.
I mean, there's
Hurricanes.
Obviously, this is all August talk, as we refer to it. But we still don't know what pictures are eventually going to emerge from all this. But it certainly looks like the Kiwi Conference has dropped off a couple of notches. Whether or not they get it back remains to be seen,
yeah.
especially when they get their All Blacks back.
True.
A lot of these teams.
Yeah. Well, the other games then, just the Chiefs will be looking to rediscover some form of some kind against the Sunwolves. Although, Jesus, well, they're at home. They should be putting them to sword. Yeah, really. So I would expect the Chiefs to get
some
through
DMAC fun to be had.
Yeah, put them at 15 for God's sake.
Yeah.
And the Reds, Brad Thorne's Reds, facing the Crusaders.
Yeah, that's gonna be a tough game.
That's definitely a tough day at the office.
Yeah.
It's at home.
Yeah,
so
still a tough day at the office.
Yeah, no, I know. It's still
for anybody against the Sailors.
Like, it's just they're double champion or twice champions in a row, going for the 3 in a row. Yeah, looking the best team in it at the moment. Certainly, as far as all the games I've seen, they look the strongest outfit in it.
Yeah,
they look like they can take it into many games, many ways, and score in many
100%,
ways.
100%. Yeah. The last 3 games are actually my favourite 3 of the weekend. There's the 2 South African derbies. The Lions are playing the Bulls in Altitude Ellis Park.
Yeah.
In Altitude. It's a great stadium. They won't fill it, but it's a great stadium.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see if the Bulls can bounce back. And I think this is as much as losing in Argentina can happen, and seemingly does happen every year to the Bulls.
Yes.
This is a good test of whether the hype is real around this Bulls team.
Yeah, or just nothing. Yeah.
That's the ultimate picture that you want to be seeing. If you want to have a hope of winning the South African Conference, you got to go there and do it to the Lions in Altitude. And on paper, they got the team to do it, so I'm excited to see it.
Yeah.
But,
certainly by Razzie's reckoning, they have more quality players than the Lions.
Dwayne Vermeulens and Jesse Creels and Andre Pollards and I tell you, you get Snyman in a bit of space. No, not Snyman. Did I say Snyman?
You did say Snyman. No, you said Skosan.
Oh, no, I didn't mean to. Anyway, it's the left winger
for the
Bulls, who was the sevens player.
Oh, God. Speckman. Roscoe Speckman.
Yeah, there you
Quality.
go.
Yeah,
you see the way my brain works in
weird
ways.
Wouldn't be too well in a big bit of space. Snyman is another monster.
You could put him on the wing. He'd bounce through some folks.
Marauding Snyman.
Blowing in the wing.
Yeah,
or Snyman.
Speckman. A great addition to the tournament this year as well.
Yeah,
like it's week 1, grabbing some quality sevens he tries. But yeah, he looks an absolute goer as a winger position, because he doesn't see. I think I said it last week as well. He doesn't seem to lack for the physicality, which sometimes happens with seventh players, particularly more so when you look at like people from the States. Carl Niles, when he had his brief tenure in Glasgow, like they're too sprintery and they're not actually physical enough to be on a 15s pitch properly, because there's not enough space for them to just run around people. They have to actually create something or power through, and they're going to take hits, and a lot of times they're just not built for that. Whereas Speckman is like, he's a rugby player. Like
100%.
he can take a hit, he can go backwards in contact and just present the ball, or he can probably through a tackle.
You give that guy some space.
He's gonna go as well. He still has that gas, and so he's an exciting prospect. He still probably needs to work a little bit on his coverage, but he's not really exposed that often in Super Rugby. The kind of the tactical kicking thing. If he wants
to ever get picked for the Springboks,
that's going to be a work on for sure.
Learning curve for him.
For sure. But it's like it's only week 3, and he's made a great start.
It's all happy days. The Sharks, max out points so far, are hosting the Stormers.
Up and down yo-yo of a start.
It's another banging game. I'm excited to see it.
Safa Conference throwing up some good games.
And there's a few guys who can work there. There's not infinite supply. Razzie's team is starting to look like it's taking shape, but there's a few guys who can force their way in. And the Sharks, would some of those boys that certainly fancy themselves
for sure.
Kerwin Bosch has that a go. Let's see how he can do. From 15, I would hope. And then the last game is the Jaguares against the Blues
in Buenos Aires.
Back off a win. Those Argentinian boys are going to be confident.
The Blues, if they lose this one,
they're dust. They're
season's over already. And Auckland feels the woe. Feels the woe of it all. But it's a tough game for them, because they're back-to-back losses and they have to go to Buenos Aires now, which is like, it's getting there is tough enough, let alone going and playing.
They're in a conference that isn't graded on a particularly kind curve. You lose your opening 3 games,
you're done.
You're dushed.
That's the position. It's win or bust, and it's away from home, and it's against quite a dangerous outfit in the Jags. It's hard enough to do some prep on them because they're pretty inconsistent. But when they're good, they're good.
If you give them space, they'll score tries.
This is it. Yeah, and that's. Their halfbacks have been so unimpressive, the Blues, that it's like, are they going to get any control over that game and try and marshal it? I don't know. Don't know if I'm optimistic for their chances. In fact,
no.
I kind of think I might see a Jags win and a.
You always see a Jags win, though. To be fair,
I have a rose tinted. I really want the Jags to be a class franchise that they have yet to be in any, at all. In any, remember the first year they came in, and it was just like reading their roster, going like, whoa, whoa, these boys
this is
class.
The whole Argentina team.
And it's just like, nope, apparently not. And it's like, maybe Super Rugby's that good, or maybe Argentinian form is just something I don't understand. And I think it's more likely the latter. They do it differently over there from everywhere else.
Yeah. They time. They're big into timing things. They time their seasons well.
They're currently ranked 10th in the world.
Yeah.
Which, is that true? Are they the 10th best rugby team in the world?
Depends on the day.
So.
Depends on the day. Yeah.
But
when it comes to World Cup time,
they're definitely in with a shout and a tradition. They have confidence they can fall back on more than Jaguares, any kind of things, you know. But yeah, so those are the Super Rugby games to come.
Absolutely.
Exciting week of it. Yeah, we're looking forward to it.
Lots of rugby in the Six Nations off weekend, as always.
Yeah.
This is this fun time of year. Things are happening. This is a World Cup year, and the season is at its peak now in the Northern Hemisphere, and it's only going to get more climactic as the weeks go on, and it's just getting up and running down south.
The intensity is a little bit far off the pace down there for now. They'll bubble up. Yeah, they'll bubble up. Yeah, for sure.
Fun times to be following rugby.
Still some good fixtures in between now and then. Even in those off times, the Super Rugby is still worth keeping an eye on, for sure.
100%. Yeah.
I suppose we're going to get towards the end and wrap up, but
do we have a couple of other housekeeping
we do have a little bit of news, the little end of podcast news segment that we're going on. We did already mention,
that's why people click into this show.
If you're still watching here, this is for you. Thanks for sticking with us. But we already mentioned USA getting the job done against Brazil, just 33-18.
No, I didn't. At this point, I didn't research, so forget about it.
Right. Okay. Yes. But I suppose the main one was just Scott Fardy from a Leinster point of view and an Australian point of view, because this is actually quite important. Because I had already thought I'd read that he was going back.
Well, I'd read that was certainly part of Cheika's plans
was to have him Fardy come back. But he has signed on a contract extension with Leinster, and
seemingly the way it's being reported is that means that there's no World Cup for him.
But surely there's scope for Cheika to do the same thing he did last time with Drew Mitchell and Matt Gitto, and just recognise that instead of Ned Hannigan, he should have Scott Fardy.
I'm sure he'll try to do it. I don't know if there's a contract issue or the way it's worked out with Leinster. Is he like saying I'm not playing Test rugby, or I don't know if you can even do that. I don't like that.
I don't know if Leinster would even do that, to be honest. I don't know if they would stipulate such in the contract.
That said, he'd be at his most useful when the Irish boys are off for the World Cup.
That is true.
Perspective.
But I don't know. I don't know about all that, because I think his usefulness is not limited to pitch. I think it's actually just the presence of Scott Fardy in the dressing room allows for a lot of growth amongst the younger lads. So it's really,
which is hindered when he's in the Australian dressing room.
It's true, but from a rugby purist point of view,
yes,
I would love to see him tog a kid out for the Wallabies, because he's obviously worthy of it, and because, as you know, and anyone who's watched this, Ned Hannigan annoys me, and I don't like seeing him in a Wallabies jersey when it should be Scott Fardy.
Yeah,
you know, but that's only me.
Yeah, the only other point I wanted to touch on, just in relation to Super Rugby, is that there's a story in Rugby Pass about Michael Cheika is in a feud at the moment with some of the Super Rugby owners of the franchises and coaches, because he's taken his Wallaby side off to apparently apocalyptic level crazy training camp where he's beaten the boys black and blue.
He flogged the boys.
Yes, was the call from Czechs, and
now injured.
Many of the boys are injured and unable to play for the Super Rugby teams, which is causing an
entirely unforeseeable, unpreventable accident.
The quote here is the Wallabies players endured a 9-day fitness camp in Sydney. last month where the Herald report Cheika showed concern regarding the condition of some of his players as the World Cup nears.
Ah, dear.
Is that good?
I don't know if that's good. It's funny though. It's definitely funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a bit silly. I can see why he's in hot water over it, because it's just, what do you do?
9
What do
day.
you do? It's so far out from the World Cup as well. That's like it. No, it's not good. Like, there's no need for it at all. They've just gone through pre-season. They're gonna incrementally get up throughout the course of the year. But like, that seems a bit silly to me. All right, checks.
Yeah.
That being said, we'll see. We'll see how the World Cup goes for them. We'll see if they're fit or not. If they come out lethargic in day one, he'll have a lot to answer for them as well. It's like, what? You should have flogged them more. But that seems a bit silly. All right.
Yeah.
Was there anything else? I think that was pretty much it. Yeah,
Jeepers, we're going for
way too long, above and beyond. But
now, if you want to subscribe to the channel, you'll get access to our special extended edition, where we go for 4 hours.
Yes. We don't normally upload that one at all.
No,
we just keep talking for the next few hours.
Oh yeah, we do. Yeah. You just get in a little 2.5 hour window into the rest of our day.
Yes,
which is
and
all just
life
this.
Most of the time.
Yeah.
But if for anyone who stuck around this long, thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, you got to take a couple of power naps on your way through. You just take it in bites.
Yes,
and eventually you'll get us all down.
Yeah,
just in time for next week's show.
Yes, indeed. Which is the idea. And next week, obviously, we'll be previewing the Six Nations games to come. There's no real sense in doing that this week while there's no game at the weekend. But let's get through a few others, get through the Six Nations stuff as well, and here we are at the far side of it.
We made it.
Yeah,
we made it. We went forever and we made it. We promised ourselves we'd keep it under an hour this time.
No, we didn't say that. We did say we'd try and get under an hour and a half, but we got nowhere near that. But
we didn't even try.
We didn't really try either, to be honest. We just got talking, as is normally the way. But sure, look, we'll wrap it up with that.
Good night, folks.
Thanks very much. Take care.
Bye.
Right.
Here we go.
It's the ball.
Should I throw it with a bit of pace, bit of heat?
You're just going to hit the light.
Yeah, probably.
That
was neither one thing nor the other.
Yeah. Oh, hit the top of it.
Yeah. All right. Next week. Next week.